Deputy Speaker.
Good afternoon, honourable members. The Secretary will now read the sixth order of the day. Can I just, before we begin, Mr. Secretary, we have decided to conclude our 2 days of sittings virtually, and we are operating, all of us are operating outside of the chambers. So, Mr. Secretary, can you please read the sixth order of the day? Mr. Secretary, can you hear us?
Yes, Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Stamela, you may proceed.
Debate on Vote 10, Transport and Public Works, Western Cape Adjustment Appropriation Bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stamela. I now call on Honourable Minister Mitchell.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, before I begin, I just want to ask if it's in order if I, in the interest of connectivity, have my camera switched off.
That's in order, Minister.
All right, thank you very much. Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier and Cabinet colleagues, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Honourable members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, the Director General, HODs and officials of the Western Cape Government. It is my privilege to present the adjusted estimates for Vote 10, the Department of Transport and Public Works for 2021-2022. I welcome the opportunity of tabling these adjustments and highlight aspects of a number of them. In the relatively short time, Deputy Speaker, that I've been in this portfolio, I've come to appreciate the wide reach of this department and the many ways in which it impacts on the lives of the people of the Western Cape and beyond. As the previous chair of the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works, I had developed a broad understanding of the department's activity, but the more intimate knowledge which has come with my new responsibilities has left me with no doubt as to the crucial role that this department plays in achieving the objectives of this government, including through its support to other departments. For example, Deputy Speaker, a snapshot of the department in September of this year would have shown a department responsible for over 3,900 projects in infrastructure, including the planning, the design, the construction and closeout, with 2,880 of these being undertaken on behalf of education and health. This is despite, Deputy Speaker, the limiting impact of COVID-related regulations and restrictions. Deputy Speaker, we in this House are used to adjustment budgets, which indicates the movement of rands and cents from one budget item to another, even from some programs to others, and in some cases, finances being put into reserves for later use when circumstances change. In this way, Deputy Speaker, departments and collectively governments ensure wiser and more effective spending of allocated funds. It is in the sharpening of pencils and drawing of fine lines for any government, whatever the cause, fiscal constraints or redirection of funds to cope with threats and disasters. In South Africa, Deputy Speaker, the combination of these two factors is aggravated by the ongoing mismanagement of the economy at a national level, the largely unchecked corruption, and the collapse of many state-owned enterprises. Many of these causes, Deputy Speaker, were highlighted by my colleague, Minister Main, here on Monday. But let me turn to the key adjustments. The main appropriation of Vote 10 decreased by 138,915,000 Rand, or 1.5% from the 9,265 million to 9,126 million. And this includes, Deputy Speaker, the following. And I'm going to deal with this adjustment in the following manner. I'm going to speak to the shifting of funds between votes, the Provincial Finance Asset Reserve, the Provincial Equitable Share, the realignment of the provincial budget, and then on rollovers. With the shifting of funds between votes under Programme 2, Public Works Infrastructure, 5,207,000 Rand, including 4,168,000 received from Vote 6 Health to extend the lease for Brackengate Intermediate Care Facility. Under Programme 3, Transport Infrastructure, 162 million Rand has been surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund due to slower than anticipated spending on large roads infrastructure projects mainly due to the effect of COVID-19 state of emergency and government-imposed restrictions that affected construction sites and the supply lines in the industry, as well as uncertainty relating to the commitment of large projects over the medium term in an uncertain budget environment. Deputy Speaker, I think at this stage I need to correct the misleading claims that this amount has been surrendered as a result of poor management and that the projects and employment opportunities involved will be lost. Deputy Speaker, this is simply not true. The surrendered amounts will simply increase the funds available within the road space during 2022-2023 at a time when the multi-year contracts to be awarded can be implemented. For instance, Deputy Speaker, the Louis Fourie Road at Mossel Bay has now been advertised and work will start before the end of this financial year. Under the provincial equitable share in Programme 2, Public Works Infrastructure, 45,540,000 rand has been allocated from the provincial equitable share reserve for property acquisitions to acquire property for education and health purposes. Under revenue retention for 2020-21, 109,297,000 rand has been generated. Under Programme 4, under transport operations, 81,338,000 rand received from the over-recovery of motor vehicle licenses and the abnormal loads fees to provide for in-vehicle technology on Golden Arrow bus services to improve the safety of passengers. Deputy Speaker, at this point, it also should be noted that the equipment remains the property of the Department of Transport and Public Works and is being used to enhance the security and a significant provider of public transport and to protect the state's subsidy investment in the service. Deputy Speaker, I want to speak about the realignment on the provincial budget under Programme 2, Public Works Infrastructure. 19,064,000 rand has been surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund due to the slower than anticipated spending on the earmarked allocation in respect of the upgrading of Horizon.
Asking them to do the service.
Honourable Van Virgil, put yourself on mute, please. There you go. Sorry, Minister.
No problem, Deputy Speaker. Under Programme 2, Public Works Infrastructure, 19,064,000 rand has been surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund due to slower than anticipated spending on the earmarked allocation in respect of the upgrading of Horizon and George Outeniqua Child and Youth Care Centres and the Clanwilliam Rehabilitation Centre. Deputy Speaker, again at this point, I must highlight that the delay was caused by the Department of Labour's slow issuing of certificates. Under Programme 3, Transport Infrastructure, 175 million rand was surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund due to the slower than anticipated spending on large roads infrastructure project, mainly due to the effect of COVID-19, state of emergency and government-imposed restrictions that affected construction sites and the supply lines in the industry, as well as uncertainty relating to the commitment of larger projects over the medium term in an uncertain budget environment. Deputy Speaker, the comments I made earlier about this amount not being lost and planned projects not being cancelled apply equally here. But Deputy Speaker, let me move over to the rollovers. Under Programme 1, Administration, 6,407,000 rand was rolled over from the 2020-2021 financial year to provide for the development of financial and supply chain management tools to automate some of the financial processes in the department. Under Programme 2, Public Works Infrastructure, 2,842,000 rand over from the 2020-2021 financial year to provide for the upgrading of the Outeniqua House Child and Youth Care Facility. 4,310,000 rand was rolled over from the 2020-21 financial year to provide for the roof repair of the Saartjie Baartman Centre that was damaged by a fire. Under Programme 3, 16,903,000 rand was rolled over from the 2021 financial year to provide for the Berg River Boulevard Phase 2 in Drakenstein. Still on Programme 3, 4,462,000 rand was rolled over from the 2020-2021 financial year to provide for the Ceres van Breda Bridge upgrade in Witzenberg. Under Programme 5, Transport Regulation, 7,513,000 rand was rolled over from the 2020-21 financial year to provide for the operational cost for additional traffic officials and equipment such as uniforms and safety gear, road safety initiatives, and baggage scanners at the Vanguard Shared Services Centre. Deputy Speaker, under these circumstances, the mere redirection of financial resources in itself or by itself is sufficient. It has to go hand in glove with smarter, cleaner government action which not only addresses real challenges, but which also gives people hope. In a few short months, Deputy Speaker, I've come to understand the extent to which the Department of Transport and Public Works is capable of delivering the smarter, clearer, cleaner government I've mentioned through the use of technology to extend the reach of our systems, including vital traffic law enforcement, the conversion of parts of the public transport system into powerful support to help us deal with the pandemic, and the development of ideas to reshape the taxi industry. Deputy Speaker, the terms red dot light, red dot like, and blue dot have become part of the language of public transport in the Western Cape and have made some contribution to Minister Mania's budget of hope as tabled in this House on Monday. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Member Mumbi.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the Premier, Leader of the Opposition, and other honourable members. Also to the Minister who has just presented his speech. I rise, Honourable Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the African National Congress to reject this budget. I am particularly concerned with the amount of 201.3 million that has been cut from this department's budget. If it was not for the 62.3 million rollover, that will be the total budget reduction, not the 139.9 million reflected in the budget. The biggest reduction is from the Transport Infrastructure Program, whose response was reduced by 364.4 million. In the Western Cape, Deputy Speaker, we have a public transport system that is divided, that is fragmented, and not integrated. We've got a public transport system that remains largely unsafe and dangerous for commuters. We've got a public transport system that remains racial in its appearance, as you've got taxis and buses for poor, colored, and Africans, and My City for the elites and the rich whites. In response to this, the department reduces the budget for transport infrastructure. These reductions come at a time when our call for an improved and equal subsidization of the taxi industry, which is the biggest transport system in the province, remains unresolved. It is high time that the subsidization issue of the taxi industry is adequately addressed and resolved. The regulation and administration of the taxi industry, especially the routes and the allocation of operation licenses, remains oppressive and divisive. To a large extent, this gives rise to the ongoing taxi violence in the province. The provincial government continues to subsidize a private entity in the form of Golden Arrow bus services, as some of the overcollection is used for these purposes to subsidize Golden Arrow buses. Despite these sad realities, the department failed to spend 2 million to provide for the improvement of public transport and safety in Cape Town under Program 4 and 7.5 million under Program 5 to provide for operational costs for additional traffic officials such as uniforms and safety gear, road safety initiative, and baggage scanner at the Vanguard Shared Service Center. These funds have been rolled over to this year, and we call for full expenditure of this allocation. We are having these debates during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This department still has a cloud hanging over the head regarding the handling of the sexual harassment case against the senior manager in the department. Perhaps part of the budget should have been allocated towards a program to address prevalence of sexual harassment and GBV in the department. while in this budget, an allocation of over 56 million is taken from other programs and shifted towards the provision for the George Integrated Public Transport Network. We remain concerned with the slow pace of intervention in the Go George and My City in the areas of Mitchells Plain and Khayelitsha. It is worrying that over 2 years passed with Mitchells Plain and Khayelitsha's people not having access to My City. Over 2.4 billion will be spent on public work infrastructure. We call for an investigation into allegations raised by the leader of the opposition, Honorable Doug Moore, yesterday regarding the contract of the company called Task CSS with this department, in this Department for Public Works Infrastructure, where we have seen the privatization of the procurement services by the department. There is still no appetite available in the department for purposes of identifying suitable land and building of the provincial government for purposes of initiating integrated development in the city. Land that is not located far from the city, it must be at the center of the city for purposes of integrating the city. It is in this regard that, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we reject this budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mvimbi. And I call on Honourable Makamba-Botia. Honourable Makamba-Botia, are you online? I'm assuming.
Deputy Speaker, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay, over to you.
Can I proceed? Okay. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. What is concerning to the EFF about this budget is that it was decreased by 138.9 million, whilst the money surrendered by this department to the Provincial Revenue Fund sits at 202 million. This picture, Deputy Speaker, alone paints a department that has a lot of money to extend that they now no longer need it anymore, despite the demand for service delivery is increasing. Not long ago, 4 children were found dead after falling in a hole at N2 Butchers Quarry intersection near Nyanga. And this happened because this department failed to identify and fill that hole before life could be lost. Furthermore, Deputy Speaker, it is the responsibility of this department to make sure that townships have better sports facilities. And in this regard, they have been failing despite surrendering money and allowing for the decrease of its budgets. For these reasons, Deputy Speaker, the EFF does not support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I assume Honourable Heron is not on. I will then move over to Honourable Murray. Honourable Murray, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. Sure. Yes, I support the budget. Like I said from the start, I'm one of the sailors who won't fight with the captain and then this boat is in a safe harbor. And we're not out of the difficult situation we are in with budget cuts and with COVID-19. We don't know what's going to happen within the next 2-3 years. So I'm not going to fight with the captain. I'm one of those who bail water out of the boat. I just want to ask the minister if they can have a look at the rights and the safety of taxi passengers. You know, I was overseas and there, people driving in taxis have a bill of rights, a bill of passenger rights. And that is, in the taxi, you can see what your rights are in terms of overcrowding, noise, reckless driving and all that. We need a bill of rights of taxi drivers where they can be reported if they don't comply with those rights, because taxis are becoming a menace in this country.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. Your time is up. Thank you. Honourable Brinkhuis.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Al Jamaa does not support this vote.
Noted. Thanks. Thanks, Honourable Brinkhuis. I now call on Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, since March 2020, our province, as well as the rest of the country, has experienced a fundamental shift as to how government goes about fulfilling its mandates, and how departments roll out service delivery. In the early months of the pandemic and throughout the 2020-2021 financial year, we saw how the Western Cape government was forced to reprioritize public spending in a manner that was both proactive and effective in order to navigate the emergency in which our province found itself. Now, 21 months later, successive lockdowns and waves of COVID-19 have caused the healthcare response to be ingrained in government policy and budgets. Currently and into the future, we will have to adapt to the need to continue managing the balancing act of saving lives and livelihoods in an increasingly constrictive fiscal framework. And adapt we have. Before I continue with my statement, Deputy Speaker, I just want to talk to the concerns that were raised by Member Mvimbi. Member Mvimbi is concerned about the 201.3 billion cut from budget, biggest reduction from transport infrastructure program 3. Public transport is largely unsafe. That's all that you are saying about that. I mean, if we need to subsidize the taxi industry, definitely he needs to talk to his counterpart, Minister Mbalula. And Minister Mbalula said that there'd be a subsidy last year, November. No actions against senior manager in Department of Sexual Harassment. All those, he knows, he's been in the committee. I mean, I am in as an acting chairperson, but he knows the responses to all that he's complaining about. And also Member Makamba Bunja concerned about the money surrendered to the Provincial Revenue Fund and filling of road along Ntunyanga caused by someone to die when falling in a hole. We need to check exactly who is responsible for that and not cast aspersions to the department saying that they didn't want to close their holes before those kids fell into the holes. Now, we need to go back into this adjustment budget to say exactly what is going to happen. In this adjusted appropriation bill, we see how the Department of Transport and Public Works has had to overcome the challenges of the budget crunch our country faces. For the remainder of the 2021-2022 financial year, the department has been allocated a total of 9.126 billion rands. This equates to a net decrease of 138.9 billion rands when compared to the original budget in March. The largest decrease in allocation was that of Program 3, Transport Infrastructure, which experienced a 364 million cut from its budget. This has naturally prompted the opposition, specifically the Honorable Heron yesterday, to start their usual and unoriginal chorus of how the Western Cape is anti-poor and doesn't care about the upliftment of our residents through job creation. Deputy Speaker, allow me to pause for a moment so that I can give the opposition members a much needed crash course on responsible government budgeting. Every member present should be and hopefully is aware of the impending budget reduction that all levels of government will experience for the next 3 years and likely well into the future. As such, this creates much uncertainty and directly affects what government is able to commit to be spent. In order to prevent the financial risk from unfolding, 337 million rand has been requested to be shifted to the next financial year. By smoothing out the expenditure over 2 years, the department is able to accommodate the long-term nature of road construction projects, which require substantial planning and procurement to take place. It must be noted that approximately 90% of the indicative capital budget for 2022 has already been committed to awarded contracts. It is thus quite clear that the monies which have been adjusted haven't disappeared into thin air or have been reallocated for other purposes. It will be spent on improving the infrastructure upon which our socio-economic activities rely. We clearly see this in the infrastructure projects for which have already been provisioned thus far. Just to name a few, 2.8 million rand for the upgrading of the Uchanika House Child and Youth Care Facility, 4.3 million rand for the roof repairs of the Sati Batman Center that was damaged by a fire. 6.9 million rand for the upgrading of phase 2 of the government motor transport facility in Rosper Street. 4.9 million rand for the upgrading of registry facilities of the Department of Education in Alfred Street. 6.8 million rand for facility condition assessment as required by national legislation. 16.9 million for the Berg River Boulevard phase 2 in Drakenstein, and 4.4 million for the Ceres Van Breda Bridge upgrade in Witzenberg. Deputy Speaker, it is important to understand that the COVID-19 state of emergency and the consequent restrictions imposed by the national government has severely affected the department's service delivery. Construction projects are labor intensive and are dependent on stable supply lines in the industry, both of which cannot take place when social distancing and business operations disruptions are in place. Recently, as a result of the worsening socio-economic situation of South Africa, we have witnessed increased incidents of crime on our public transport systems. With national government constantly failing to improve the safety in our communities, the province has once again taken up the responsibility to do more in ensuring the well-being of our residents. For example, as a result of over-collections from motor vehicle license and abnormal load fees, the department was able to transfer 81.3 million rand for the provision of in-vehicle technology on Golden Arrow bus services. The department confirmed in the standing committee on Tuesday that since the installation of the cameras on the selected buses, 16 arrests were able to be made. This will go a long way in ensuring safer commuting for people. Crucially, in line with the government's health response, the realignment of 120 million has been made to fund the Red Dot program, specifically with assisting with the transportation of people to get vaccinated. As of 30 July this year, 5,274 people had been transported by Red Dot taxis to be vaccinated. This number is most certainly set to grow in the future. The establishment of the Red Dot taxi services formed the bedrock of our Blue Dot taxi pilot. As members know, this initiative is a proactive attempt by the Western Cape to establish long-term changes in the taxi and by extension, the transport industry. Since taxis make up 75% of all transport trips, it has become essential for the operational capacity of public transport due to the decline of PRASA. After being launched in May this year, the Blue Dot pilot now employs more than 800 operators and is expected to bring about 9 billion rand in net positive economic benefit. Apart from the economic benefits, large gains are being seen in ensuring safety in the industry. All of the participating taxis have been equipped with trackers, which allows the department to monitor more than 3 million kilometers of taxi roads. The data which is received will provide the Western Cape better insight to assist with ultimately inducing behavioral change in the industry over time. This is why the department has secured sufficient operational funding to allow the program to continue until the first quarter of 2022, even though it was supposed to conclude last month. In this province, we are driving forward with progress. Deputy Speaker, in closing, we are proud to have a department which has proven to act decisively against the service delivery and fiscal pressures it has faced since the start of the pandemic. This is once again physical evidence of the DA governance in action and of a department which works for you. Deputy Speaker, the DA supports this budget vote 9 of public works transport. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now call on Minister Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to all the contributions made to this budget vote. Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to respond to Honourable Mvimbi because I think I've highlighted the reasons for the in my submission in the beginning, but also, Deputy Speaker, to highlight that on Tuesday, when the department and myself appeared in front of the Standing Committee, the same issues were raised, and the department and myself provided the honourable member with the information. Deputy Speaker, but there's two things that I want to remind Honourable Mvimbi about. When the attacks on Golden Arrow buses happened earlier this year, Honourable Mvimbi was the one member of the committee who acknowledged and complimented the fact that I, as in my capacity as chair at the time, called Golden Arrow to the Standing Committee to explain to the Standing Committee with the department on the safety issues on these buses. So being proactive and assisting Golden Arrow, the department then stepped up and the committee was briefed throughout that process. So to come here today and then to lambaste the intervention in order to keep the passengers and commuters of this province safe, I think it's a real low blow to commuters in that's making use of that public transport system. Then Honourable Mvimbi referred to Tusk. Now, Deputy Speaker, in April 2021, and as at the 17th of September 2021, the leader of the opposition asked parliamentary questions. I then responded to those parliamentary questions, and if Honourable Mvimbi and the leader of the opposition does not want to accept the facts and the truth, there's nothing that I can do about it. They asked the questions, we provided the answers, but it seems like they don't want to accept the answers. It's like they're looking for I don't know for what they're looking, and whoever's feeding the information must please, in order for the honourable leader of the opposition and Honourable Mvimbi to be aware, must feed them the correct information. Then I want to, Honourable Mareb, thank you very much for your contribution. And the Blue Dot initiative and the Blue Dot pilot, as Honourable Maseko has highlighted, is exactly that, where a passenger and a commuter has an opportunity to rate the driving experience in the minibus taxi that they take. There's a WhatsApp number that gets fed through to the system, and we can then track and monitor driver behavior, and also in our attempt to keep the passengers safe during this pilot process. Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you to Honourable Maseko and to the Standing Committee for the interactions throughout the year. I think it will be remiss of me to not acknowledge the important role that the committee plays with oversight, but also to use this opportunity to thank the HOD and every single member of the Department of Transport and Public Works in this province. Thank you very much for the work that you do to ensure that we serve the citizens of this province to the best of our ability. And then a special thank you to my office that when I stepped into office, that continuously assists to make sure that the ministry functions well. And then lastly, Deputy Speaker, to every provincial traffic officer that will be on our roads during this festive season, thank you very much for the work that you do for ensuring that we keep our roads safe. And I want to extend an invitation to members of the committee, but also members of Parliament, to join us in the many roadblocks that we will have throughout this festive season. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Mitchell. That concludes the debate on this vote. The Secretary, or Mr. Stamela, will read the 7th order of the day.
Vote 7, Social Development, Western Cape Adjustment Appropriation Bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stamela. I now recognize Honourable Minister Fernandes.
Good afternoon, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Am I audible?
You are, Minister.
And may I request that in the interest of bandwidth that I switch off my camera and then I shall present. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier and Cabinet colleagues, Leader of the Official Opposition, Honourable members of the Provincial Parliament, the Director General, members of the media and all guests present in the chamber and on the virtual platform. Good afternoon. We are in the 16-day period of no violence against women and children, and it is appropriate for me to acknowledge the contribution of all activists, stakeholders, and our VP program unit who work tirelessly to ensure that women and children are safe in this province. Honourable Deputy Speaker, as the Department of Social Development, we have experienced a year like no other. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all the departments in this province, as well as the country as a whole. With the COVID-19 pandemic and the irrational measures imposed during hard lockdown, we experienced increasing unemployment, as mostly women were affected by the closures of early childhood development centres, amongst others. We have seen deepening poverty and the big red flag, that of mental health and well-being of our citizens and employees. The current socio-economic conditions are exacerbated by the restrictions of Disaster Management Act, but also originate from the nation's pre-existing structural challenges and the fact that South Africa was in economic distress before COVID-19 hit our shores. Honourable Deputy Speaker, when unforeseeable economic and financial events affect the fiscal targets, adjustments to the budgets are forced to be made. The department's adjustment budget demonstrates that we have limited resources at our disposal. However, if there's one thing we have learned in our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, that is that no challenge is impossible if we work together. Despite all the economic and financial shocks, it is proposed that the Department of Social Development's 2021-22 budget allocation be increased from 2.663 billion rand to 2.726 billion rand, an increase of 63,124,000 rand. In the interest of time, Deputy Speaker, I will touch on the notable adjustments made in the Budget Vote 7 allocation. The most significant shift witnessed is the amount of 40 million rand made available by the National Treasury to cover the shortfall attributable to the implementation of the 2021 wage agreement. Due to the early childhood conditional grant, additional funding of 17,228,000 was received to address the shortfall from phase 1 of the President's Employment Initiative, aimed at providing financial support to workers in the early childhood development sector who were harshly impacted by the COVID-19 lockdown. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the management of the ECD Stimulus Relief Fund by the National Department of Social Development has been disastrous, to say the least. The turnaround time for payments to successful applicants has been delayed, which has resulted in great unhappiness within the ECD sector. On more than one occasion, I have written to the National Minister for Social Development, Ms. Lindiwe Zulu, seeking clarity on the above-mentioned concerns, with no response. Another major shift in the Vote 7 adjustment budget includes the 3.491 million rollover of funds towards the modification and customization of vehicles for the transport of intellectually disabled children. As a department, we recognize that the lack of accessible transport to special care centres is a barrier for children with disabilities, children who are already far less likely to attend school. Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the 16th of November 2021, 2 vehicles were handed over to assist children with disabilities, one to the Noma Kabiso Centre for Children with Special Needs and Inclusive Education based in Philippi, and the other to Beaufort West APD, Masikoli Daycare Centre. There are further plans to deliver another 2 adapted vehicles to the disability sector next year. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the department has received an additional 400,000 through shifting of funds from Vote 1, Department of the Premier, to Vote 7, Social Development, to cover the cost of the Early Childhood Development Summit held on the 4th of October. The summit followed the commitment made by Premier Alan Winde during his State of the Province address. The summit focused on the function shift of the ECDs from the Provincial Department of Social Development to the Provincial Department of Education as announced by President Ramaphosa in February 2019. The ECD function shift, though, Honourable Deputy Speaker, has required extensive work for the officials involved and has been challenging to say the least. However, when it comes to the actual ECDs, we aim to make the transfer as seamless as possible with minimal disruption to the important work that they are doing for the children of this province. And I can confirm that the Department of Social Development and Education are working very closely together on the ECD function shift. I wish to take a moment to thank the many ECD teachers, the fora, the volunteers, and the ECD program office who are playing their part in setting the foundation for the learning of our children. Honourable Deputy Speaker, despite 2.005 million being rolled over for the Vangasali campaign, this has not stopped us from remaining committed to registering and to finding and assisting ECDs with their registrations. 10,269,000 was shifted from the compensation of employees to households for the provision of leave gratuity payments for staff exits and retirements. Where staff are leaving or retiring, measures have been put in place to ensure that service delivery continues. Honourable Deputy Speaker, whilst the economic outlook for the future seems bleak, we have shown time and time again how resilient we are as a nation. We will adapt and strive to assist as best we can as far as humanly possible. As we near the end of the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, we must unite against the scourge of violence that innocent women and children experience and witness daily. We can and must do better. I wish to thank all the members of this august House for their efforts in combating the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. We must arouse a deep sense of commitment amongst all our people to act against such heinous crimes, not only for 16 days, but for 365 days a year. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I now table the budget vote 7 for DSD. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Bakubaka Falls.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I rise on behalf of the African National Congress to reject this budget. We gathered today exactly 6 days after the world observed the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, also known as the World Day of the Handicapped, to raise our awareness about understanding and accepting people with disabilities. The theme for 2021 was leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. Throughout the past 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic in the province, it has been proven that persons with disabilities are the most vulnerable segment of the population, as they are at a potentially high risk of catching the virus because of their underlying conditions, and they have faced many barriers due to the pandemic. As we have entered the fourth wave of COVID-19, we had hoped that the department would make provisions through this budget and take all the necessary measures to protect the health and well-being of people living with disabilities. We ask the MEC to take keen interest in ensuring that individuals living with disabilities receive the necessary protection they deserve, and that their caretakers are supported in this regard. Through this budget adjustment, we note the reallocation of 44.6 million from sub-program 3.3 childcare and protection to sub-program 3.2 care and service to families. The explanation given for this is that the funds are reallocated to the correct sub-program. We demand an explanation from the MEC on how these funds ended up on a wrong program. Because of this, the department could not provide the needed support to the persons living with disabilities. The MEC must tell us what these reallocated funds will be used for. Our call remains that they should be used to support this segment of the population to provide necessary protection during wave. Moreover, we are concerned that this department failed to spend 3.5 million for the modification and customization of vehicles for the transport of intellectual disabled children, which has now been rolled over of this year. The MEC must tell us the reason for this and commit his department to fully spending these funds this financial year. Honorable Deputy Speaker, my second concern regarding this budget is around the allocation for compensation of employees. We welcome the intervention from the national government, which includes the allocation of 17.2 million for the early childhood development grant subsidy component and to address the shortfall from phase 1 of the presidential employment initiative. That's how to provide unemployment risk support to early childhood development related workers impacted by COVID-19 lockdown. We also welcome the additional allocation of 40 million in the equitable share in respect of funding received for the impact of the 2021 wage agreement. In this regard, national government has made available 57.2 million to the Western Cape and 5.5 million is through rollovers to make the total increase of over 63 million during this adjustment. It is important to note that the provincial government made available a mere 400,000 shifted from the Department of the Premier to fund ECD Summit. Lendo somlomo xa siyiqwalasela ibonisa ukungakhathali kwalo rhulumente ulawulayo apha eNtshona Koloni. Izolo oku besishunyayezwa ngumphathisa uMeina malunga nemali urhulumente ayityalileyo kwi-social wage. Kodwa xa siqwalasela uhlengahlengisa le mali yesebe akukho nto siyibonayo malunga naloo nto. Kucacile ebelahlekisa nje uluntu esenza le nto umbutho wakhe udume ngayo ukulahlekisa uluntu. Loxa urhulumente kazwelonke esenza inzame zokunyusa imali enikwa eli phondo, iyachalabisa ukubona ukuba eli sebe lona liqhawela ngasemva ukuba olu hlengahlengiso lithathe imali engaphaya kwezigidi ezilishumi ilibekelwe ukongeza amathuba emisebenzi. Ayayisebenzisela loo nto, iyandikhathaza ke loo nto ngoba kweli sebe kunomcelimngeni wabantwana abafundele ngonontlalontle abangafumani mathuba kwemisebenzi kwezi mali bazikhuphayo kweli sebe bezinokuncedisa amathuba wemisebenzi kwaba bantwana. It is wrong for this government to shift over 10.9 million earmarked
none of what she says can be heard by people who don't speak closer.
Stop interjecting. 1 minute. Honorable Bakabaka Force, I've been calling you to order for the last 2 minutes. Can I just please, Honorable Maria, do not interject.
No,
there was a point of wait, Honorable Maria, just can you give me I didn't ask you to do my job. 1 minute, please. Honorable Bakabaka Force, you obviously didn't hear me, and I can understand that is very valid. What I'd like to, there's been a point of order. If you could just wait, please. Honorable Maria, what is your point of order?
My point of order, just now the speaker said to the public that Peter Marais was wrong, that there are interpretation facilities available to all speakers. They can speak any language. Baku Baku Force honorable member has just proven the speaker to be wrong. There was no interpretation facilities for her speaking in her native language. So what is it now? Are there interpretations or are there not interpreters when somebody speaks a language other than English?
All right, Honourable Marais, can I just check with the table staff if our second device is working for those that are on a hybrid system? Can someone from the table staff confirm that? Honourable Marais, if you can just wait for a second. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Stimela, is our second device opportunities working for language? Okay, while I'm waiting for that answer, please, can I get an answer from the table staff? I recognize you, Honourable Moran.
Speaker, thanks. And if I missed the hand of the Honourable Marais, then upfront, I apologize. I haven't seen a hand, and yesterday the speaker basically explained to us how you should raise a point of order by putting up your hand and not just speak and interfere when a member is speaking. I just wanted to make that point. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Moran. Yes, I think Mr. Honourable Marais got a little bit too loud there for a moment, but if I can just get confirmation 1 minute before and then I will make a decision. Honourable Marais, if you can just be patient, and Honourable Baku Force, I will give you your time back. But please, Honourable Marais, please be mindful that actually it should be a normal process, which we pride ourselves in having a second device using your cell phone if you're using your computer to be able to access those language facilities. I have got confirmation from the table staff and from the Secretary himself that it is in working order, Honourable Marais. And you know now for almost 2 years we have been using the hybrid system. You access your language facilities on a second device. I will ask IT to make contact with you, and I'm going to ask Honourable Baku Force, in fairness, because she hadn't done anything wrong, that she can proceed from the time that she spoke in her vernacular language. Please may you proceed. Honourable Marais, please put your hand down. The IT will contact you. Honourable Baku Force, please continue where you had left off, as I could not even begin to follow. Thank you. Honourable Marais, 1 minute. Honourable Marais, please, I trust that that's in order. I'd like to continue with the program. Thank you very much. Honourable Baku Force, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Iyandikhathaza ke loo nto ngoba kweli sebe kunomcelimngeni wabantwana abafundele ukuba ngoonontlalontle abangafumani mathuba wemisebenzi. Kwezi mali bazikhuphe kweli sebe bezinokuncedisa ekuvezeni amathuba wemisebenzi kwabo bantwana. It is wrong for this government to shift over 10.9 million earmarked for compensation of employees to other programs when we have 404 unemployed social work graduates. We reiterate our calls for this department to engage other departments such as Western Cape Department of Education to create space for unemployed social worker graduates in schools to respond to the shortage of social workers and psychologists. In closing, Speaker, I want to make these last 3 points. It is disappointing that is no provision made to increase support measures to survivors and victims of GBV and femicide, despite these being increased cases. Secondly, it is disappointing that in a time that unemployment is at its highest in the province, resulting in increased demand for the service of this department and increased poverty levels, this department is not making any provision for humanitarian relief. Lastly, I made 3 proposals in the committee for the department to consider an increased budget allocation for the CNDCs, the the beneficiaries that rely on CNDCs the whole year are left vulnerable in December, as all CNDC are closed between 15 December and 8 January. So the department must consider at least giving these people grocery hampers or Christmas pack for December. Singumbutho we-ANC asivumelani nolu hlengahlengiso ngenxa yezo zizathu sizikhankanyileyo ngenxa. Enkosi kakhulu, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bakubaka Force. Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, with a budget increase of 63.1 million, the EFF is disappointed that the department has an underspending in almost every sub-program, which is vaguely and plainly attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. It becomes more and more clear that if the department runs out of ideas with regards where they should spend the money, they then blindly blame the COVID-19 pandemic for such a failure. Also, the EFF does not understand why every Western Cape government department fails to fill its vacant positions. Moreover, what is also concerning is that when it comes to restorative services, the budget for substance abuse prevention and rehabilitation was cut by 7.1 million. Substance abuse is a serious matter, and in this province, which needs serious intervention. Amongst other people who waste their lives at an early age, substance abuse is also one of the contributors of crime in this province. And if it is not tackled early, then it is the society that will suffer the consequences. The EFF therefore does not support this vote, Deputy Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I would assume that Honourable Heron's not online. I then recognise you, Honourable Murray.
I abstain from voting, thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. I recognise Honourable Brinkhays.
Thank you, Speaker. Al-Jamaa does not support the vote.
Noted. Thank you very much. I now recognise Honourable Bosman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to colleagues and the people of the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, as we meet today, there are vulnerable, desperate and destitute people across our province still standing in lines at the offices of the South African Social Security Agency. These desperate people are attempting to apply for some of the most basic social grants. Deputy Speaker, we are back to the same position we were in 2 years ago. SASSA and the National Minister failing to provide the most basic services. Last year, I reminded this House that there are shadows on the opposition benches attempting to deflect from the humanitarian crisis we face as a result of the SASSA backlog in grants. Not just the temporary disability grants, but also the much anticipated 350 rands relief of distress grants. I want to again remind this House that SASSA, under the leadership of the national government, is the lead agency charged with providing social support to the most vulnerable. Yet, despite this, Minister Zulu is more preoccupied with grandstanding and standing by whilst the most vulnerable in our province are being waterbombed by the police. This agency has been missing in action and the playing with the food security of our people. But Deputy Speaker, today I am proud of the work being done by the staff of the Western Cape Department of Social Development. They've chosen to work in partnership with the many NGOs and community-based organizations to ensure that the most vulnerable are treated with dignity. This is true to their mission to ensure the provision of a comprehensive network of social development services that enables and empowers the poor, the vulnerable, and those with special needs. With that said, I'd like to remind the House that the Democratic Alliance supports this vote. This budget is really aimed at backing the people of the province. It contains an allocation for the Early Childhood Development Grant to ensure that the hardworking ECD practitioners are paid. Deputy Speaker, this is in stark contrast with the trend across the country. The Western Cape is the only province that have paid out the ECD stimulus grant. The early childhood development is crucial in the social development sector. It provides us an opportunity to focus on the development needs of the most youngest members of society. The increased funding of 603 million for the Presidential Youth Initiative will go towards employing social workers. This will be a further boost to the work that the department does. And in contrast to the mistruths that Member Baku Force have just uttered, The Western Cape employed 948 social workers last year, 114 more than initially planned. And with this grant, they will employ more. In this year, the department has gone a long way to provide for people with disabilities. It has availed additional funding for residential facilities for children and adults with disabilities over and above the transfer funding allocations. The department has made masks, sanitizers, and soap available to these care facilities to ensure that they can protect their residents during the COVID pandemic. The support provided in the form of training to build capacity at these daycare centers was also done through this budget and will go a long way in continuing this work. Speaker, the Western Cape has really put our money where our mouths are when it comes to gender-based violence. We are the only province that has 6 dedicated shelters for victims of gender-based violence. These shelters are an important space for survivors of violence to rebuild their lives. Gender-based violence is a scourge that does not get the right amount of support from the African National Congress. We know that they pay lip service to these core issues. I'm astounded that my colleague, Honorable Baku Force, says that this department does not provide support for GBV, especially since the ANC in the Western Cape is currently enabling a convicted child rapist and putting him up as a mayor. What an insult to the many victims of gender-based violence. There's also been a very clear lack of political action from the African National Congress on the ongoing crisis of the DNA laboratory backlog within SAPS. Deputy Speaker, this has resulted in hundreds of GBV-related criminal cases being stuck off the roll due to this crucial evidence not being there. This is really an indictment on the ANC National Congress. In contrast, the Western Cape Department of Social Development has made sure that victims of abuse has access to psychosocial support, and we've got dedicated social workers that help gender-based violence victims towards a pathway of recovery. Deputy Speaker, the national government recently suffered a severe cyber attack when the IT systems at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development was hacked. This hack meant that mothers depending on child maintenance grants could not access these grants. The slow and incompetent approach to solving this problem is again indicative of an ANC government that hates South Africans. Unlike this uncaring attitude from the ANC in the national government, the Western Cape government, through the Department of Social Development, has led the way by providing humanitarian relief to the most vulnerable. It has continued support for community feeding schemes, NGOs, and families in need of the support. Deputy Speaker, I don't understand why Member Baku Force is praising the national government for giving us the money that we need from the national budget. We cannot continually be grateful for crumbs while the people of the Western Cape suffer. I really hope that in the next year, Member Baku Force and the members of the opposition will really pay attention in our committee meetings. But for now, Deputy Speaker, the Democratic Alliance supports this vote.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now call on Honourable Minister Fernandes.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I wish to thank everyone who participated in this debate. I also would like to assure the Honourable Member Baku Force that I, together with the department, remained committed to supporting the needs of all citizens, especially those with disabilities. I also want to, as the Honourable Member Makamba Bottia has said, we have seemingly blamed everything on COVID. Unfortunately, during level 4 and 5 lockdown, most of our facilities, including the 300 old age homes which we monitor, were in lockdown, and that included facilities for persons with disabilities. So the delay with the transport or the rollover of the funds was partially due to COVID, but more importantly, Transport and Public Works nationally, the Inator system was the reason for the delay in getting the 2 other vehicles registered. So we've had to roll it over. However, we have set firm guidelines so that we can get the 2 vehicles out as quickly as possible. Regarding the CNDCs, we remain committed to humanitarian aid. The Honourable Baku Force will remember that last year we forked out between local government and social development sufficient funds to provide for 50,000 food parcels. But I must remind the Honourable Member that it is the duty of SASSA in terms of the Social Services Security Act, Chapter 3, to provide social relief of distress. and SASSA has failed dismally in this regard. SASSA used to provide food parcels, uniforms, and when they switched to the SRD 350, where 13 million people applied and the system crashed, they failed many vulnerable individuals and citizens, not only in this province, but across the country. And we as a government had to step in together with civil society and ordinary citizens who stood in the gap to assist. So I think it's a little bit rich of the Honourable Baku Fos to apportion blame to the department for not providing social relief of distress when we have a dysfunctional SASSA that has all the money to provide the needs of the people, and it is not being done. To the Honourable Makamba Boccia, I have noted your concerns. Substance abuse is one of our priority areas, as is gender-based violence, as is persons with disabilities and strengthening families, amongst others. However, as a department, we have to cut our cloth accordingly, and unfortunately, fortunately, the work is still happening. However, we work very closely with all local government municipalities, where we have local drug action committees, and that is part of the MOU which we sign with local governments once councils have now been resumed. So I trust that that has addressed the concerns that were raised. I'm sorry that some of the members abstained from voting, but COVID has impacted the world globally, and COVID has impacted our country and our province and every single department. And it now provides us an opportunity, Honourable Deputy Speaker, to reset our moral compass, to focus on social justice, and to do right by those who are not by the means. Unfortunately, we can only work with a limited purse and with what is available. In closing, I would like to say, I wish to thank Premier Alan Winde and my cabinet colleagues for their support. Despite the many challenges experienced during COVID, which included 3 cabinet meetings a week, meetings on Saturdays and Sundays, and the establishment of a comprehensive recovery plan, amongst others, we have worked well as a team, and our transversal approach will reap rewards for all citizens in the long term, because we are not going to recover from COVID in a year, in 5 years, or even 10 years. We are in this for the long haul. I am most grateful to the Department of Social Development, led by the very capable HOD, Dr. Robert MacDonald, my head of ministry, Mr. Nandanal, and the A team in the ministry, the Chief Financial Officer and the finance team, who have had to balance the budget under the most challenging economic conditions. I must recognize the ongoing commitment and dedication of the entire team DSD, especially our frontline workers who have been serving the most vulnerable citizens in this province under the most challenging conditions, bearing in mind that many of them were too affected by COVID-19. To the Standing Committee Chairperson, the Honourable Gillian Bosman, and members of the Social Development Standing Committee, thank you for your ongoing commitment to ensure that the department is held accountable and ensuring that oversight is completed in the best interest of the residents of the Western Cape. Honourable Deputy Speaker, allow me in closing to finally thank the many citizens in this province who are standing in the gap to assist the most vulnerable. Thank you for being active citizens and supporting government and all stakeholders in ensuring that we deliver services and practice Ubuntu in everything we do. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Fernandes. That concludes the debate on this vote. We now will ask the Secretary to read the 8th order of the day. Mr. Stamela, yes.
Ingxoxo ngevoti yesibini yendlu yowiso noqulunqa umthetho wephondo leNtshona Koloni ngomthetho wolungelelwaniso nohlengahlengiso oyilwayo.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the Honourable Speaker Mkasela.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Premier, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Members, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Chapter 9 institutions, the Commissioner for Children in the Western Cape, ladies and gentlemen, the people of the Western Cape. Madam Deputy Speaker, allow me to present the Western Cape Provincial Parliament's adjustment budget for 2021-22 financial year. The Western Cape Provincial Parliament main budget of 165 million rands, 859,000, was supplemented with the rollovers of 3.5 million rands and revenue retention of 342,000 rands from the previous financial year. Madam Speaker, this has left the Western Cape Provincial Parliament with an adjusted appropriation of 169,711,000 rands. The statutory appropriation received no additional funding and remained at 47,997,000 rands. Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the Western Cape Provincial Parliament received no additional funding during the adjustment estimate. This has been purely on the basis of working smart and being able to be agile in our approach. And of course, in the VUCA world, this provincial parliament had to find creative means to sail and kept abreast to steady the ship as we move on in the turbulent waters. The surplus funds from the previous year, as well as the internal shift, brought about by an internal reprioritization, where we have reallocated funds during an adjustment estimate process. And this, of course, is the sound leadership by the Secretary of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, the CFO, and the SMT. The rollover, which includes the revenue retention of 2020-21 financial year, Madam Deputy Speaker, was mainly allocated to Program 1, and that is governance, which is leadership and administration. And that is an amount of 1,832,000 rands. Program 3, public engagement, an amount of just over 2 million rands. A breakdown of the rollover, the shifts, environments per program, Madam Deputy Speaker, is as follows. For Program 1, governance, leadership and administration, it's 1,490,000 rands, which was allocated to cover the costs in respect of the committed projects which were not yet completed in the 2020-21 financial year. These main projects included the payments of association of public accounts committees, affiliation fees. As you would know, honorable members, the issue of APEC remains one which this parliament remains committed to, in order to make sure that, in order to ensure that we police public funds and ensure that the expenditure vis-a-vis what has been allocated, there is connection between those two. So we affiliate to the APEC and we pay annual subscription. And in this case, we had to pay fees with regard to the 2019-2020 financial year and the 2020-21 financial year to the amount of 276,000 rands. Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the payment of the costs related to the work study exercise completed in the office of the Speaker to the amount of 252,000 rands. Various training interventions to the amount of 406,000 rands to ensure adequate capacity and continuous learning and development of staff and members. In addition to the above, the surplus funds from the underspending as a result of the non-filling of fully funded vacant positions, less demand for interpreting services and less catering due to the parliamentary sittings being held virtually. Of course, that is because we continued with our program of ensuring that this parliament does not close its shop and therefore we continuously serve the people of this province to ensure that the lawmaking, public participation, and oversight over the affairs of the executive continues. But this, because it was virtual, Madam Deputy Speaker, we saved money. And that is why we're able to have these funds. And these funds were then also provided for in the rollover. And this is an amount of 308,000 rands to supplement the travel budget to cover higher than anticipated travel expenditure. Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the provision was also made for the following: the procurement of additional software requirements which were not provided for in our original budget, and these included the migration of data to the Office 365 data, the SharePoint intranet and knowledge management related tools, and that is an amount of 365,000 rands. And this, Madam Deputy Speaker and honorable members, is to ensure that this parliament, as you have witnessed, continues to be a well-oiled machinery that is able to serve its members and, of course, ensure that our systems comply to the systems and the technology of the 21st century. And we have done this because we ensure that we plan and budget and continue to innovate. And this is one of the things that I think the Western Cape Provincial Parliament takes pride in, that our ICT is one of the world-class personnel led by a competent team. That was even recognized, Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, by the peers in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. In the last year, they received an award which was initiated by the Secretary, Mr. Romeo Adams, which was an award awarded by the peers to say this is a unit that has performed very well among everything else. But each and every one of the staff members in that team received a medal to recognize the work that has been done by individuals, but of course by the collective. A phased-in implementation of our cybersecurity as per the implementation plan contained in the cybersecurity strategy, which was approved on the 30th of September 2021. This we have budgeted for 669,000 rands. Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the implementation of the recommendations which emanated from the work study exercise in the Office of the Speaker, the amount of 353,000 rands has been allocated for this purpose. Procurement of additional camera equipment and mobile sound system for external hybrid events, as well as the additional laptop requirements to a tune of 1.4 million rands. And this was to ensure that we continue to support our idea of getting out of this building, but being out there in ensuring that members of parliament are in touch with their constituencies, and that this parliament is indeed a parliament of the people, not to forget the important role that this parliament is to play of bringing people into the word parliament. And that is something that we have to continue to budget for, honorable members, Madam Deputy Speaker. In terms of Program 2, Parliamentary Services, additional funding to the amount of 100,000 rands was shifted from Program 1, Governance, Leadership and Administration, to supplement the procurement of an X-ray machine to be used for scanning metal and baggage, in order to improve physical security on the ground floor at the Queen Victoria entrance of the legislature precinct. We want members to be safe here. We don't want a situation where you arrive and you see strangers and you don't even know how people have entered the building, but let alone what they are carrying when they walk into the building. And this means we need to spend money, Madam Deputy Speaker and honorable members. In this case, an amount of 570,000 rands was allocated, as well as 317,000 rands to cover for additional closed circuit television camera within the legislature building. Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, an additional amount of 214,000 rands was allocated to ensure that we cover the higher than anticipated costs with government gazettes. And this is, of course, over and above the provision of an amount of 356,000 rands to committees in order to ensure that the work of committees continues beyond the baseline allocations, because the work of committee continued to evolve, and this reason has necessitated that we must respond as Parliament to the work and demands that come with committee work, and that is oversight, public hearings, and so forth and so forth. So this was important to happen in the work that we do, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Members. Program 3, public engagements, as I indicated earlier, this is an amount of 2,020,000 rands, which is a rollover from the previous financial year to cover for the committed projects which were not yet completed in the 2020-21 financial year. An amount of 234,000 rands to cover the costs of the graphic design services as well as social media advertising, which was not included in the original budget, were also provided for. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, in terms of Program 4, which is members' support, a provision was made, one, to support political parties and the research capacity and other related mechanisms. We've allocated 82,000 rands per political party, and this covers 7 interns, which in turn gives 1 per political party, and that is an amount of 82,000 rands per party, as well as an additional amount of 1,221,000 rands, Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, to cover the higher anticipated costs related to members' second dwelling allocation in the enabling allowances, and that is the provision of members, support to enable them to do their job. And this is what we as Parliament have realized, that it's important to augment this particular area to protect this Parliament and to ensure that the members are able to do their job in the best capacitated way. I'm going to pause here, Madam Deputy Speaker, and say that we've done everything that we could do as this Parliament to ensure that we work within the confines of the limited budget that we have and work smarter in an agile environment to cover the core mandates of a legislative body. And as the legislative arm of the state, our core mandate is to ensure that the lawmaking continues, oversight over the affairs of the executive continues. And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, the question of public participation becomes the bedrock of any parliament. And that is what we will continue to do. And that is what we've been able to do within the limitations provided for by the budget. And hence, the restructuring and the reprioritization takes into account all of the 3 priorities and the mandate areas that I've just indicated. I would like to thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for your support, and thank the chairperson of the POC, the WIPARI, and of course all the members of the POC for ensuring that this Parliament functions, but of course that as an executive authority, I'm able to account to a body in terms of FAMPLA, and of course that we continue to spend money wisely within the confines of the law. I would like to thank all the members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for continuing to do the work to support us as this Parliament and ensure that this Parliament shines as part of the leading parliaments in Africa, and of course, as part of the best parliament in the world. So thank you very much for your support, and to every single staff member of this Western Cape Provincial Parliament, whether your job is not one of the jobs that you think is important, your role is important here. Every single one of you is important, from the lowest paid official to the highest paid official. Thank you for your continued support to myself the Deputy Speaker, and the Secretary to ensure that this Parliament runs and functions optimally. And of course, to our stakeholders, I appreciate everything that you've done to partner with us, to work with us, to ensure that this Parliament functions. Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the staff in the Office of the Speaker, and of course, under the leadership of Ugwanini, Usbe, Umia. Siyabulela kakhulu, Mia, for your role to steady the ship and manage and operate in the space that which has allowed this office to operate beyond just the limitations of being a office of the Speaker, but to be an office that can work to lead in society and in this Parliament. Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr. Secretary, I cannot imagine how I would have managed to lead this team without your support, and thank you very much, and may God bless you. That concludes my address for the purposes of the vote, and I tabled this budget vote for the Parliament to consider, and I hope that all parties will support me. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I now call on Honourable Member Lecker. Member Lecker, are you there?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Yep, you may proceed.
Deputy Speaker and the rest of the members in the House, as well as staff members, allow me to greet you all. As the ANC, we do not support this budget. In solidarity with the hard-working staff members of this legislature, who work under very difficult conditions, with some experiencing burnouts due to being overworked. Despite this sad reality, this department has failed to spend 5.863 million of the budget for compensation of employees. This has impacted on filling of vacancies, including the ICT vacant post, which could have possibly led to a prolonged digital migration. It is also concerning that the implementation of the functional enhancement is at a snail pace. In the past, we've said that the functional enhancement was used to drive CADRA deployment in the legislature. Now that the person that needed to be deployed have assumed their offices, there is no longer any agency in its implementation. We are extremely concerned about CADRA deployment in this legislature. In the past, we have raised many examples of this. And the latest case was Mr. Unati Lasiti, who was recently deployed by the DA to the city of Cape Town. As we are aware, in the 16 days of activism against GBV, it is important to call for stricter measures when employing people to work at this institution. It is alleged that Mr. Lasiti, who is now deployed to the city, has a cloud of GBV allegations hanging over his head. I want to ask the Speaker whether reference of prospective employees are checked before they are employed, or they are simply deployed to office without due diligence followed. Deputy Speaker, the biggest injustice of this department is taking funds away from compensation of employees for funding to cover higher than anticipated costs due to members' second dwelling in the office of the Speaker. Funding for vacancies that exist in the legislature is being diverted into office of the Speaker to cover for higher than anticipated traveling cost. This is a grave injustice. While we understand the dynamics and pressures presented by COVID-19 pandemic and the need for members to get secondary dwelling because of difficulties presented by lockdown restrictions, it was wrong for this to be taken from the allocation earmarked for job creation and compensation of employees. Deputy Speaker, the funds earmarked for fully funded vacant positions, which were not filled as planned, have been shifted to cover for additional camera equipment and mobile sound system, as well as additional laptop requirements. The legislature has more CCTV cameras than the entire Cape Flats, and yet jobs are shared and posts frozen to procure more CCTV cameras. Isn't that a farce? We note that funding has been made available to cover graphic design services as well as social media advertising, which was not included in the original budget. It is concerning that the graphic design is taking longer than anticipated. We're also concerned about the slow progress of public education. Deputy Speaker, in closing, I note that 3.5 million rolled over from the previous financial year to cover projects which were not completed in 2020-2021. As the ANC, we have been calling on the Speaker to ensure that parliamentary questions are to be accessible on the parliamentary website. It is disappointing that no provision is made for this in the budget. We call on the Speaker to prioritize the project in the new financial year. Deputy Speaker, we risk being constitutional delinquents and abdicating our responsibility to hold the executive to account. We need to appoint environmental commissioner. It is a law in the Western Cape. There can't be any excuses. It must happen. Lastly, I would like to thank the staff for their dedication and hard work. I wish them and all the members a joyful and safe festive season and a happy and prosperous Christmas and New Year celebration. Please remain safe, sound, and sober until we meet again. As the African National Congress, we do not support this budget. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lecker. I now recognise Honourable Kamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The EFF's concern is the lack of filling of positions by the Provincial Parliament. We had hoped that this House will lead by example and show the provincial government how this is done, since it is this House that must hold the executive accountable and show them the way. In that regard, Deputy Speaker, the EFF does not support this vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise, in the absence of Honourable Heron, Honourable Murray.
Voorsitter, ek ondersteun hierdie begroting en ek dink dat ons moet kyk dat vakature is maar een besparing wat ons kan gebruik as ons besparings daar kan maak sonder om in te boet op die funksie van die departemente om ons begrotings te laat klop. Nou, ek weet ons wil almal graag 100% poste vul, maar dit doen jy as jy baie geld het. As jy min geld het, moet jy klaarkom met die min wat jy het. So dit kan nie 'n verskoning wees om nie te aanvaar die begroting nie, omdat sekere poste vakant gehou word nie, tensy jy kan bewys daar's nou swakhede in die stelsel gebring daardeur. So ek ondersteun die begroting.
Baie dankie, agbare lid. I now recognise Honourable Brinkcase.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Al-Jama, we do not support the budget, and because of the alarming inequalities here in the Western Cape. And yes, we also want to wish everybody, all the members and the executive and all the staff of the WCPP, all the best over the festive time. May they have a nice time over the festive period, and everybody must stay safe, and everybody must look after themselves, stay sober, please. And we all return safely next year to work again at making the Western Cape province a better place for everybody to stay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I do hope that the Honourable Brinkcase and Lecker will be in the House tomorrow, meaning online, so that you can have an opportunity to wish everyone again. I am assuming you will be proceeding with tomorrow's sittings. We now recognise Honourable Wenger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Western Cape Provincial Parliament is set to receive a 3.8 million rand increase, most of which the just over 3.5 million has been rolled over from the previous financial year to cover incomplete projects in the previous financial year. The funds are adjusted to the following programs: governance, leadership, administration increases by 637,000 rand to 74 million. Parliamentary support services increases by 100,000 to 22.8 million. Public engagement increases by 2 million to 13.6 million, and member support by just over 1 million to 59 million. Under Programme 1, expenditure for Parliament's smooth functioning, especially at this time of remote and hybrid work, is set for items such as software licenses, interpretation and sign language services, cybersecurity, and the purchase of IT equipment for public engagement workshops. Under Programme 2, the projected expenditure includes public hearings and oversight visits, provisions for standing committees, and Hansard translations. Under Programme 3, projected expenditure includes provision for public education and outreach, design, build, and to launch a digital platform for public engagement in the province. It also contemplates the continuation of the Teta Nati programme. In the adjustment budget, we identify a clear effort to improve public outreach and public participation in the Western Cape. This is crucial given the dynamics of the current COVID-19 period and the need to mitigate the challenges and bringing Parliament to the people. It makes it clear that the WCPP remains an active legislature with full access to parliamentary levers through virtual and hybrid means. We remain the only legislature that continues to publish parliamentary questions and answers during constituency periods. Similarly, the WCPP has been active through its committees in hearing from the public on matters such as District 6, experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic and government's responses, as well as the distribution of UIF TERS funds. The budget is adjusted to further bolster public outreach through Teta Nati and additional equipment such as laptops and sound equipment for public outreach. The WCPP has committed to oversight, unlike other provinces such as the Northwest, where the Petitions Committee has not met in 3 years and there is no chairperson and no procedural staff. Or in the Northern Cape, where the MECs simply meet and greet and don't stay to answer questions in standing committees. While the Western Cape is budgeting for additional CCTV and scanning machines, as well as graphic design and social media advertising to protect our physical infrastructure and to help us further into the digital domain and towards the fourth industrial revolution, other provinces are still unable to fully embrace virtual and hybrid sittings. I'd like to thank the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, the Secretary and Management team for their hard work and parliamentary innovation. I'd like to thank the procedural staff and specifically the procedural staff of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee overseeing the performance and financial management of this institution. Honourable Lacke would do well to note the section in the Constitution which entitles all residents the right to freedom of association. Madam Deputy Speaker, Parliament is more than just procedure. It is the custodian of the province's laws and protection of the best interests of citizens in terms of government action. This budget is an aid to assist this institution to achieve exactly this. The DA therefore supports vote 2. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Wenger. I now recognise Honourable Speaker Mkasela.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, you know, in the 5th term, I used to be a sweeper sometimes, and it was a role that I enjoyed so much. And I was tempted to sweep now, and I forgot that I'm the Speaker of this Parliament, so I will not sweep. But I just want to appreciate the contribution by the honourable members, and of course the Honourable Chief Whip, I think the chair of the POC, who has eloquently articulated what we are about and what we have done, and of course the trajectory as we move on in the changing environment presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, and how we have swimmed through against the currents which were very rough. We've seen now this parliament led by the chairperson of the POC who chaired for this parliament, the ad hoc committee on COVID-19, and did an excellent job, and with the committee of the ad hoc committee on COVID-19. Madam Deputy Speaker, also the Chief Whip was able to, dissect what this adjustment budget is about. Well, this is not a main budget. Remember, we've not received any additional funds. So what we had to do, we had to be smart in our approach, and that is where agility comes in. In the VUCA world, a world defined by volatility, uncertainty, a need for complex decisions in a very ambiguous environment, it needed leadership. It needed a very serious, on-the-go kind of an approach in taking decisions, and that is what we have done. And of course, if there's parliament that has done everything to ensure that its business continued despite all the changing environment brought by a pandemic, it is this parliament, the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. And I'm glad that our peers in South Africa, for instance, the Northern Cape, the Northwest Provincial Parliament came over the past week or so, where the Deputy Speaker led the team to meet this parliament, which was led by the Deputy Speaker, who was the acting speaker at the time, and met with them. And they had an excellent engagement, both the professional team from that side with the professional team here and the political leadership of the two parliaments. But that is the kind of relationship and the kind of appraisals that this parliament has been able to be exposed to, that our peers are saying that we are doing very well. And we are one of the best parliaments. But we appreciate it because also we learn in the space. We're not sitting here with the idea that we possess a monopoly on wisdom and authority. We don't. But we continue to evolve in a very changing environment. Madam Deputy Speaker, honorable members, so I thank the chair of the POC and the members of the POC for this exemplary leadership to hold us to account and to support us to do our job. The chief whip of the ANC and of course the member of the POC. Thank you, Honorable Leke, for raising the issues that you've raised, but I would love to see that in future, and of course this is a space where we can help, and I've said it in the POC, that we need to see how do we digest the budget in order to ensure that the members of the POC understand exactly what we get to present in the POC and how this budget links up with the different sub-programs. And obviously when we do environments between the different sub-programs without necessarily compromising, without necessarily confusing, especially the members who have to do oversight over us. Madam Deputy Speaker, it would not be fair to say that we get more money, myself and the Deputy Speaker, as the office of the Speaker. I think that would be very unfair. What we have done, let me help here. This parliament has engineered and championed a handbook, which is a speaker's handbook, and that is the presiding officer's manual. It is something that South Africa has never had in the history of democracy in this country. Now, this parliament passed the handbook, and then to enable the handbook, we had to shift some of the activities that were in the members' affairs into the handbook, so that the handbook looks after the affairs of the Deputy Speaker and the Speaker. So that is the Speaker's office. Now, to suggest anything other than what it is designed to achieve, it will be counterproductive. But to add on top of that, we have allocated more funds to members. Now, the chief whip of the NCCs here, she doesn't want members to get more support towards the second dwelling because it's waste of money. then the members of her party can choose not to submit their claims, and then we won't pay them. But I have enabled the members here in this parliament to be able, because currently they're getting, Madam Deputy Speaker, 8.5. So what I've simply done here is to increase it to 10.5, just for them to do the job, instead of taking from the funds of school fees and food for their children, that we enable them as these members to assist them. It's not even covering the full amount, because when you ask where do members live, you will realize that they pay more than what we are able to assist them. It's not for the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. It is for everybody in this parliament. Now it won't be fair to say to members they must not enjoy this benefit. I hope that you'll change your mind, Honorable Leke, in this area, but we will do everything to support the honorable members in this regard. Secondly, and lastly, the question of whether we do the assessment before we appoint people in jobs, because we don't deploy them here. We employ people following HR processes and following the Labor Relations Act and the Department of Public Service and Administration's processes and prescripts. So in a nutshell, what we are doing, and I think it's important, we send people for assessment externally and they get to be assessed and do the necessary vetting. But I think nobody is perfect and no system is perfect. And if there are certain areas that needs improvement insofar as how we do that vetting, or the agencies that do this for us, including SAPs, that is a question that we must deal with. And I think, thank you very much for raising this, Honorable Leke, because that's certainly an area that we cannot, we cannot compromise the fight against gender-based violence, which is an ongoing pandemic in South Africa, in this province. And we've got to do everything we can to win this fight and the battle on this pandemic on gender-based violence and femicide. Madam Deputy Speaker, the other areas I think really were about spending too much money on traveling and so forth and so forth. Yesterday we had a meeting of the CPA upon concluding the sitting. I spent there as the president of the CPA branch an inordinate amount of time explaining to members what it is that we do. Now, I'm at pains to say this, but the honorable members must please, when we present these reports, interrogate and be hard on us so that we explain thoroughly. Now, I will do it again here now. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it became necessary to comply. I will tell you, for instance, how many times I had to test when I went to Nigeria and Rwanda for COVID-19, Madam Deputy Speaker. I tested in one trip about 4 times, just to test before you go to a conference, you test again when you come back tomorrow, and you test obviously when you go to the airport, and until my nose could not take it, but I had to do it. But that is money, it's money. And we pay a subscriptions to all of these, and airlines have got requirements, Madam Deputy Speaker. You're gonna fly or you don't fly, but they need you to provide all of the vaccinations and the tests insofar as COVID-19 pandemic, the latest one. Now, that is basically what it is. And I think we also cannot be drawn into issues of members of staff having preference on party affiliation, as long as they do not bring that to work. I will not tell of any of my 116 staff members here that no, don't belong. Don't like that party, don't vote for that party, or do not subscribe to that ideology. Remember, this is a place in society where we encourage free speech, but of course, freedom of choice and freedom of association. And we actually encourage the implementation in totality of the Bill of Rights in this province. But this is an institution that leads that. So the only thing that we must always do, and I like what Honorable Leke said, we must make sure that we do not allow our staff members to be biased towards particular political ideologies here. When we work, professionalism, impartiality, and the list goes on. And that is embedded in our values, which is in the main chiefly addressed under diversity. That is inclusive of all of those things, ideology, and so forth in the main. So we cannot then prescribe and circumscribe how our staff members should participate. As long as they don't do it here on the job, we will never tolerate that, and we'll make sure that there are consequences where people do it on site. And in particular, the person that the honorable member referred to, there were explanations that were given by the administration, and I think that was adequate in my view. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I have thanked the honorable members, and I will do it again. And thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for your ongoing support in ensuring that we work as this parliament to make it the leading parliament in the region, and of course, continue with our innovation and continue to provide the service that a parliament must provide. I want to thank the chair again of the POC and the members of the POC, the office of the speaker, the secretary of parliament, and every single staff member in this parliament for your ongoing work that you've done and you continue to do in this parliament. Inkosi Nibusise, Bayadanki, may God bless you. Inkosi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. That concludes the debate on this vote. We will now deal with the matter of public importance as printed on the order paper. I trust you're ready. I recognise the Honourable Chief Whip Wenger.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The recent identification of the new COVID-19 Omicron variant and the Western Cape approaching a fourth wave with increasing number of infections, we as parliamentarians have a responsibility to share information and provide a forum for public discussion on the way the virus is developing and to discuss the vital importance of vaccines. This is the reason we have called for this debate, so that the latest information on the virus can be shared with the public representatives in this House, and to be able to debate constructively on how we can best protect our citizens and their families over the upcoming festive season. We believe that world leaders should be guided by data and the best available science. This is even more important during a pandemic when so many lives and livelihoods are at stake. Being able to quickly track developments is key. On the 25th of November, South Africa announced to the world the discovery of a new, highly mutated variant of SARS-CoV-2, which was later named a variant of concern, Omicron. At this point, we do not know for a fact where Omicron originated and whether that was in Southern Africa, but we do know that we were the first to identify it. South Africa has excellent genomic surveillance, and we are proud of our hardworking scientists and researchers who have tirelessly served us throughout the pandemic, raising alarm bells when needed and helping to keep us, and the world by extension, safe. This pandemic has shown that when the world works together, great things can be achieved, such as the development of the COVID-19 vaccines in record time. What we would like to see is an extension of this global solidarity to ensure vaccine equity in all of the world's people being able to access vaccines. Many countries in the global north are giving out third shots, while many in Africa have yet to receive one. We've seen that numerous promised vaccine doses to COVAX have reportedly not been forthcoming, and this needs urgent attention. Deputy Speaker, this urgency is in fact increasing. Just yesterday, news broke that a third dose of a vaccine, such as the Pfizer jab, is necessary to better protect us against Omicron. And even though we're all justifiably fatigued and overwhelmed, there's one thing that we know for sure: vaccines do work. Those who are vaccinated against COVID-19 are far less likely to be hospitalized or suffer long-term illnesses from the virus. And so we need to focus on getting as many people vaccinated as possible. Yesterday, South African hospital group Netcare reported that 75% of hospitalized patients in Gauteng, the epicenter of the fourth wave, are unvaccinated. The CEO, Richard Friedland, said that the majority of the 800 COVID-19 patients who have been admitted to Netcare hospitals since the 15th of November were unvaccinated, making up 75% of the cohort. He also said that 4 of the patients aged between 58 and 91 died of the virus and all had serious comorbidities. Only one of those was vaccinated. And this, Deputy Speaker, is the key message. Even with new variants, vaccines are one of our most important interventions to keep citizens and families safe. Vaccines, good hygiene practices, and social distancing. While vaccinated individuals may still get the virus, vaccines ultimately save lives by preventing severe illness and death. By contrast, unvaccinated individuals are now, with the highly contagious variant, at great risk. We therefore ask all residents earnestly and with urgency to make the choice to get vaccinated. It's encouraging to note that this week marks a significant milestone with more than half of the entire Western Cape adult population vaccinated, 52%. However, we need the other 48 to come forward and get their jabs immediately. I got my jab. Have you? Deputy Speaker, in opening this debate, I would like to reflect that the COVID-19 pandemic has transformed many legislatures in how they conduct their business. With limited time in this persistent game of catch-up and with the pandemic, which the pandemic has brought upon us, it is a standing challenge to legislative bodies such as ours. How can Parliament be pushed further to be more effective in protecting our citizens and families? Today is a good start in our effort through this debate to be relevant and public focused as we prepare to face yet another unique challenge and threat to our collective well-being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Wenger. I now recognise Honourable Windvoogel. Honourable Windvoogel, unmute yourself. Yeah, so you're still muted. Let me try and see if IT can unmute you. Not sure if IT can assist, Honourable Windvoogel.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Speaker?
We can hear you. Or you may proceed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it was on the 11th of March 2020 when the Western Cape recorded its first positive COVID-19 test results from a 36-year-old male with a travel history to Europe. After 2 years of living with the pandemic in the province, we have recorded 532,601 cumulative cases with 7,135 reinfections and a total of 20,257 deaths. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the pandemic has exposed the deeply entrenched disparities between healthcare for the rich and the poor. Our full support and call for the implementation of the National Health Insurance to address these and to create a robust health platform to withstand pressure of COVID-19 were rejected by the DA. Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape has experienced 3 previous peaks of infections during the past 2 years. Last week marked the beginning of the 4th. The Western Cape has 7,559 active cases. The HOD of the Western Cape government confirmed a week ago that the province has officially entered a resurgence. Since the week-on-week percentage has changed in the 7-day moving average of new cases and has been more than 20% for more than a week. Scientists at the Centre for Epidemic Response and Innovation in Stellenbosch believe that the Omicron variant is responsible for these worrying trends. Deputy Speaker, a South African study which discovered the Omicron variant found a higher rate of reinfections among those who were previously infected by COVID-19, which suggests that Omicron can evade immunity from prior infection. More worrying to the scientists is that Omicron is more than 3 times as likely to reinfect people than previous variant due to the phenomenon termed immune escape, which means the virus can evade immunity acquired through either infection or vaccination. Deputy Speaker, South Africa scientists have made a crucial discovery. If anything, they should be celebrated and honored for it and not punished. The unfair targeting of South Africa by various countries globally is incorrect. The country cannot be punished for being transparent about the new variant. Furthermore, the unfair criticism by the finance MEC against national government was mischievous, childish, and very opportunistic. As if the Western Cape is a country on its own. As members of the August House, across all political divide, we should speak in one voice and call for the lifting of the travel bans against South Africa and its neighboring states. Deputy Speaker, the more the majority of the population remains unvaccinated, the higher the risk for new variant to emerge. Earlier this week, the Western Cape government announced that the province breached the 50% mark of adults who have been vaccinated with at least one dose. This is lower than the targeted 70% plus for the end of the year. Youth are the most vaccine hesitant population group accounting for only 39.6% of vaccination in the age group between 18 and 34 years. The 60 years and older group has over 70% vaccinated persons, while the 50 to 59 years group has 61.6, and the 35 to 49 years recorded 53.4 vaccinations. This presents a serious challenge as government efforts to achieve population immunity are delayed while widespread vaccine hesitancy, false information, and anti-vax sentiments. Deputy Speaker, another contributing factor was vaccine inequity, as rich countries honored vaccine doses while the rest of the poor countries remain unvaccinated and under-vaccinated. South Africa started this vaccine program late because of this. We must unite in calling for an end to vaccine hoarding and vaccine inequity. Deputy Speaker, the provincial government has finally heeded to our calls to halt its ill-conceived vaccine rollout plan and to close the CTICC vaccine site and open more vaccine sites in poor communities. We thank them for listening to our calls, even though it took longer for this to be implemented. The provincial government has since brought innovative initiatives like Vaccine Taxi, vaccine outreach and pop-up sites. We call for these to be sent to the rural regions and the poor working class communities. Had this been done early and more funds geared towards communication programs to counter anti-vax sentiments, we would be closer to the target. Deputy Speaker, as the Command Council began to debate over the possibility of mandatory vaccination in the country, I call on the MEC to make public the Western Cape view on this matter. With the rapid spread of Omicron, the need to get as many people as possible vaccinated is very important. Deputy Speaker, as the world observed the International Day of Persons with Disability on the 3rd December under the theme Leadership and Participation of Persons with Disability towards an inclusive, accessible and sustainable post-COVID-19 world, we call on the government not to leave behind persons with disability in the vaccine rollout. As the ANC, we call on all citizens to get vaccinated in the interest of assisting the country and province to achieve its target for population immunity. In so doing, we will also be saving lives. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Provincial. I now recognise Honourable Minister Mbombo.
Thank you, Segela Somlomo, Premier, honourable colleagues, and everyone in the House, Molweni. Speaker, because I've got a 40 minutes speech and I'm not sure about my bandwidth, I will just switch it off the camera for now until then. Thank you very much. Speaker, first let me thank the Chief Whip, Mireille Wenger, for sponsoring this debate. It comes at a crucial time for our province as we now see the rapid increase in new COVID-19 infections across the province. In the last 24 hours, we have recorded 400 new infections, 171 new hospitalization, and 0 deaths. Our current number of active cases is now about 7,653 in the last 24 hours, with a total of 137 hospitalization and 37 in high care ICU. The data that I just received now, we have got about 1,067 cases in the 7-day moving average. It will, in order for us to be in the 4th wave, we will need to have about 1,100, which is probably tomorrow we might be on the 4th wave. Whilst the Western Cape is still technically in a resurgence, we are on the brink of the 4th wave, which should begin based on the NICD definition, as I indicated earlier. I therefore begin with a message to the public. There are 4 things that we need to do now more than ever. Vaccinate to prevent severe illness and death. Wear your mask because the virus spread in the air. Ensure good ventilation with lots of fresh air. And if you are gathering, keep it small and outside. In simple terms, protect your breathing space. These 4 steps are based on scientific evidence, and I urge every person to please keep themselves and their loved ones safe. We need an all-of-society approach with every person, including those in this House, Deputy Speaker, playing a part to save lives. We also developed the warning signs, the indicators that varies from green, yellow, orange, and red to guide us on what initiatives that we need to activate in regard to now when we have the 4th wave, in regard to the positivity rate, the bed occupancy, the oxygen usage, among others. We have also been closely monitoring the new variant, Omicron, and its implications for our health platform in terms of new admissions as well as for death. At this stage, Deputy Speaker, it appears that the increase in COVID-19 cases, which is taking place at a faster rate than previous waves, is not being matched by the same increase in hospitalization and death, as I indicated that we haven't received any death as yet. Unfortunately, it is simply too soon to draw any conclusion on this, because in as much as that we have seen hospitalization among the young people, but we are very much aware of incidental cases where young people might come for something else, like trauma and so forth, and then they ended up being tested. What we do know, though, with confidence is that vaccinations will continue to work in protecting against severe illness that leads to death. And that is why I again appeal to every person who has not vaccinated, especially if you are over 50, please do so as soon as possible. I do assure this House that based on evidence and data, we will continuously adapt our response to any new factors that may emerge because of Omicron, and we will share all the information we have with the public in a transparent and timely fashion. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, throughout this pandemic, we have learned from previous wave and adjusted our responses accordingly. Our lessons learned from the 2nd wave assist us greatly in preparing for the 3rd wave, and our lessons learned from the 3rd wave are still informing our response now. That's why we have tabled to the Cabinet, Western Cape Cabinet, a new resurgence and 4th wave response plan that provides broad parameters along with the 6 domains, which are namely change community behavior to prevent infections, ongoing surveillance, particularly on hospitalization, support and maintain mass vaccination campaign, titrate health platform for the COVID capacity, maintain comprehensive health services. We cannot now and not prioritize some of the other non-COVID cases over the COVID. Lastly, we have to safeguard the well-being of the healthcare workers. Agile actions have been identified to titrate the health system response based on predetermined marks to ensure we are always prepared. Local management teams now can adjust their response aligned to the strategies as I indicated and in accordance with the local context to ensure relevance, appropriateness, and adequate response to COVID-19 4th wave. Deputy Speaker, throughout the previous wave, we have ensured that our internal infrastructure should be able to respond accordingly. This strategy of enhancing infrastructure at existing facilities means that the facilities remain on standby to come online when necessary. For example, the Bracken Gate Hospital of Hope and Standard Hospital of Hope are still operational, in addition to the other field hospital beds attached to some district hospitals. The intermediate care capacity created at Elendegia Hospital and the Mitchells Plain Hospital of Hope will be brought back online when necessary and at short notice when the trigger inform us. Whilst always it is a last resort, we remain ready to de-escalate some services and create additional acute care capacity at short notice. We will continue with the distribution of the chronic medication, and now it's not only about the healthcare workers who have to drop them in the addresses to the people, to the recipients, but also we came up with the innovation where we've got the e-lockers, where a patient can be able to send anyone and then gets the password and then opens the e-locker, just like in the post office. Anytime, whether Sunday or Saturday, in some areas where we even have brought all of these medications, even at the parking malls, where there is a need for such. We also continue to closely monitor the usage of bed across our province through a centrally coordinated and professional operation known as the Bed Bureau Management System. This enables us to closely monitor these triggers and act where needed. Our flagship, which is the data management and the technology throughout, where we use the dashboard, where even the public can be able to access the information, and it is still there. That's why, as a province, you are the only one who could be able to reconcile the excess death that is being provided by the MRC, where we can also determine whether those deaths, they were COVID related. Similar that you are the only province who could be able to track the reinfections for those people who might have COVID and then they've got COVID again. So that's why sometimes we find that our numbers in the dashboard may not necessarily be the same numbers as also reflected also in the national. And also we've conducted some prelim research just to check, especially with the over 60s, in terms of whether the vaccination does work. For example, in Grooteskier, where we could be able to safely say that when you are unvaccinated, you are likely to be hospitalized. And also when you are hospitalized, you are likely to go to a ventilator. Deputy Speaker, again, the previous waves, also they did show us that healthcare workers play a critical role in our response to the COVID pandemic. They serve as our frontline workers in the fight against COVID. That's why it is crucial that we take every step to ensure that our healthcare system is protected and sufficiently staffed. I want to pause here and thank and honor all healthcare workers. You guys remain the bedrock of our response, and we want to make sure we continue to care for and help you as you help others. Condolences to those, the lives that has been lost, including the relatives and everyone. That is why we have extended even the contracts for the most critical posts. We have also established a recruitment database for additional COVID-19 nurses and medical staff that will allow us to bring online additional healthcare worker capacity. We also offer psychosocial and wellness support for staff that is available even at their facility doorstep for healing and recovery, as COVID has affected and affected us at the workplace. We provided extra 2 days leave for every staff member, which is, I think it has come to end now in December, as a part of the token of appreciation. We have had nursing excellence, where we were thanking specifically the nurses, replacing the Cecilia Makiwane Awards. Next week, we were supposed to have the vaccine coverage, also recognition, the district and also some individuals and the partners. But unfortunately, now that likely might be on the fourth wave, we have just paused on that. Our health workers have already received the booster vaccination, and surprisingly, there have been in many parts of the Sisonge we have now undertaken the booster. It means that we should be able to operate at a greater capacity in the following months. And also thanks for the also health workers, even at the time that we keep on sending them the circulars in terms of the types of a PPE that needs to be worn, but they listen, and also that nobody, according to the AG, has stolen any PPE, including the money. And also we have been able to ensure that we have weekly webinars, circulars throughout, so that we provide as much information. Deputy Speaker, another key pillar of our health platform response is oxygen infrastructure. Key lessons during the previous wave taught us that we need to have that infrastructure and systems in place to ensure we'll have the necessary oxygen to treat those who are ill, both the mobile ones and also even some of those that are mountain, because we'll never forget what happened on the 31st on the 24th, Christmas Eve, when we were almost going to be running out of the oxygen because we are relying for the whole country on one outlet. Deputy Speaker, I know I've already mentioned vaccinations a few times, but it's because they are the first line of defense together with the non-pharmaceutical interventions. I cannot emphasize just how important it is for our province as the Premier will explain in regard to our common economy and jobs. Having said that, that's why we have to ensure the equitable access, as Member Van Vogel indicated about the vaccine taxi, demand creation, and also to tailor it accordingly according to the geographical areas, so that we don't leave anyone behind. That's why, Deputy Speaker, we have catered for different age groups. We have been, for the youth, where we have been to all the clubs, most of the clubs. We have had the campaigns just before Joel. By the way, Speaker, the province had the most number of the people in terms of the vaccine uptake between the ages 18 to 35. During that process, during that time, we're busy with that campaign. We also targeted men. Wise men know when to take the vaccine, that they need to take the vaccine. We have been to the taxi rank. We have been with the jabs for the goldies, which is the over 50s. We have been in churches. We have been in the pop-up vaccination sites. We have been with the SASA, trying to get as more of the over 60-year-olds to be able to vaccinate. We have been at the front house of Tanisaras, where they might be having some stockfell, or they've got some whatever that they urhoi, kind of the events where we'll put the tent there and provide the vaccine. We have been with the music trucks as far as the Leo Khamka, where we brought all the TikTok, the youngsters, to be able to vaccinate. We have been to the homeless. We're the first province actually to be able even to go up to that level that we vaccinate the homeless. At the time, they will keep on reminding us that no, we can't because they are undocumented. We have also engaged with the sex workers. I'm adding most of the people who are vulnerable, who are even difficult to reach, even in a non-COVID health services. We have been with the sports players, clubs where they undertook the vaccination. We have been in most of the factory shops where people could be able to vaccinate. Whilst our focus is primarily for now on the over 50-year-olds as their most vulnerable population, but we don't leave anyone behind. We are focusing on neutralizing misinformation and strengthening pro-vaccine trusted voices, even through the campaigns such as Ask a Doctor. The t-shirt that I'm wearing now is one of those Ask a Doctor. This weekend will be in the Vredendal. I think 2 weeks ago, we were in the Khayelitsha and other areas in Mitchell's Plain. This allows residents to ask a local doctor about the vaccine and its safety. We also continue with our community outreaches and work with businesses and civil society, councillors, clinic committees in order to be able to give effect for all society response to increase the number. Deputy Speaker, as Member Van Vogel mentioned, the taxi vaccine approach. 9 EMS vaccine taxi units have been deployed across the province to provide mobile COVID vaccination. This is in addition to what I've already mentioned in regard to reaching everyone. And this one is in partnership between us, Old Mutual, and Accelerate Cape Town that have assisted in regard to the funding, and various NGOs who can be able already assisted us to find those people. Like yesterday, where we're vaccinating 2 days ago in Pella, vaccinating even in the homes of the people. These units, Member Vogel, through you, Deputy Speaker, is already deployed not only in the metro, it's in Garden Route, in Cape Winelands, especially in the target areas where there's a low uptake. We are doing everything in our power to ensure that vaccines are easily accessible, and that's why we're taking vaccines to the people using the red dot and all of those. Deputy Speaker, 57% of people in the are vaccinated in the Sisonge study have the booster dose, as I indicated for in regard to our staff. 85% of the 50-year-old population have been vaccinated, and 65% of the 18-14-year-olds have been vaccinated. As a result, at this stage, over 4.3 million doses have been administered in the Western Cape. Actually, we are leading the country in regard to the adults per population that have received at least one dose for the whole of the country. We are leading in that aspect. Whilst we are still about 51% in regard to the adult population that have had, the fully vaccinated, we are trying as much as we can to ensure that people should be vaccinated. That's why we undergo door-to-door, doing the loud hailing, we are trying to make the people to be able to vaccinate. Deputy Speaker, whilst we are leading South Africa, indeed, there's still more things we need to do more. Before I sit down, we welcome the SAPRA approval for a third Pfizer dose which now opens the way for a speedy policy process to make the booster dose to be open for those who already received their 2 doses of the Pfizer's. And we're looking forward because they indicated that it's going to be 6 months. Of course, it has to start with the EVDS, where the national has to open up the EVDS. But for us as the province, when you count the 6 months, it means that those older persons who have vaccinated in the beginning, when we started with the public vaccination, after the staff, the healthcare workers, I think we started in the 17th of May. Therefore, it means that those people will be able to be vaccinated in January. For us, we are ready to vaccinate those people. But having said that, whilst we appreciate the 3rd dose, we need to understand that currently we are providing a 3rd dose for the people with specific medical conditions which make them immune compromised as confirmed by the medical doctor. So there are still people who are getting already the 3rd dose for those who are immunocompromised. We urge everyone to wait for the official announcement of the introduction of the booster dose for the general public before presented to vaccine sites for this purpose. My part will always be encouraging in the space of the National Health Council that they expedite the opening of the EVDS because it has to open in order for anyone to have that to be recorded. Lastly, Speaker, I can safely say as the Western Cape Government Health, we have done everything possible to take vaccines to the people. We'll continue to find new ways and we'll continue to innovate and learn so that we leave no one behind. We need all of us, the whole society, the public, the private, which is what has been happening with the private businesses and everyone that have been helping us to ensure that we leave no one behind. Let's unite to vaccinate. As I always say, that I just want to thank the HOD, his team from the top management from all districts throughout the furthest to Bito, the residents, the furthest to the Maritzburg, the residents, the furthest to Vredendal, the Niveras to the residents. We want to thank the people of the Western Cape. Actually, even for because in as much as that in some cases you'll find that people don't put up the mask or they don't adhere to the non-pharmaceutical interventions, but the majority of the people in the Western Cape, they do actually comply, especially now in regard to the vaccination. That we still lead in regard to the total number of the adults that have been vaccinated, in as much as that is 1 dose. Our target is for that at least we can have 85% of the over 50-year population to be vaccinated at least by the end of the year, 65% for those who are below the 50. We do have the capacity, in as much as that it has always been 30,000 doses per day, targeting 200,000 per week. We have the capacity to vaccinate 40 to 60,000 per day, which can go up upper. So we really pledge for the people to come vaccinate. And then lastly, Speaker, as I always say that we don't want to leave anyone behind. Universities and everyone, and here this house is also our responsibility in our hand to make sure that we have got safer Cape, Western Cape.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister. Deputy Speaker, on the 5th of March 2020, the National Institute for Communicable Disease released a statement confirming a first case of COVID-19 being detected in South Africa. From that point onwards, everything in the country took a sharp turn for the West. Life has never been the same as we used to live it. This led to the National Cabinet declaring that the country is now facing a national disaster and consequently the country being placed under hard lockdowns. The effects of level down lockdown, although had a purpose, they crippled the South African economy, leaving millions of people being out of jobs and now relying on the mere government grants and food parcels intended as form of social relief of distress. Moreover, these benefits, which were intended to assist our people, ended up being politicized and abused by greedy politicians both at a national level and a provincial level. For an example, TABS grants were either not paid to millions of workers who deserved them or were paid into companies with greedy owners who did not want to pay these monies to their intended recipients. I hope government has taken note of that. We then require strict measures to monitor councillors of ruling parties in the Western Cape municipalities when providing social relief through distribution of food parcels, that it must never be about party lines or affiliation or political affiliation, and must provide all families affected and who really need such relief. Deputy Speaker, moreover, after failing to deal with the first two waves of COVID-19, the DA government in the Western Cape decided that the high number of COVID-19 cases in the province are too embarrassing for their administration, and they decided to stop massive COVID-19 testing. We then call upon the Health Department, Deputy Speaker, to put in place a COVID-19 dashboard intended to inform us about the number of active cases, amongst other things, and must also put measures in place to make sure testing is taking place. We also call upon Deputy Speaker to the department to provide free testing at a larger scale to avoid what has been the case where people must be charged exorbitant amounts of money for testing which they cannot afford. Where will people get between 600 and 900 to test COVID-19 when they have lost their jobs and cannot put food on the table? We furthermore, Deputy Speaker, the very same DA administration in the province which promised all hands on deck and hotspot strategy always struggle with every COVID-19 wave that comes, despite lying to masses that their strategy is proactive. The reality is that Western Cape health facilities are under-resourced, and if it was not for certain levels of lockdown being imposed, the system could have long collapsed. Lastly, Deputy Speaker, as the Minister has alluded that we are on the brink of the fourth wave, the Omicron, the Minister has also made mention that there is no death that has taken place as yet in the Western Cape. So we call upon the Western government to make sure that the vaccine centers are expanded to and easily accessible to all community members, specifically in the townships. And lastly, Deputy Speaker, the EFF would like to encourage the people of Western Cape and the whole of South Africa to vaccinate, as that will go a long way in boosting their immune systems to fight against these never-ending COVID variants. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. In the absence of Honourable Heron, we move over to Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the ACDP takes note of the debate of public importance in the House today, namely the development of COVID-19 pandemic and the importance of vaccinations in the fourth wave of COVID-19. Speaker, I want to reiterate the stance of the African Christian Democratic Party of opposing vaccine passports or mandatory vaccines. As the ACDP, I want to say what Reverend Kenneth Meswe, ACDP President, said, that mandatory vaccines and vaccine passports will be discriminatory and will amount to a dom pass of the apartheid era. The question is, what has made mandatory vaccines suddenly so urgent? The ACDP, the only political party that took government to court on the roll-off of ivermectin, and the ACDP was successful. I've asked the Western Cape government to assist taking national government to court with the rollout of ivermectin when replying to the Premier's speech at SOPA in Granatendal. Ivermectin is used for over 40 years on more than 10 billion people, and yet the Western Cape says it's not proven. Why is the Western Cape government reluctant to roll out ivermectin, but instead they opt for an experimental vaccine, and I do not know how many booster shots to come? I hope their arms is long enough for all the booster shots they will receive. How can making vaccines mandatory stop citizens from being vulnerable when the President said of the Republic said, at the same time he admits weeks of retreating data, only then will we know and have a better understanding how effective the current vaccines are against Omicron. The ACDP re-emphasized that vaccines should be a choice and not mandatory because we are not guinea pigs to be experimented on. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Murray.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, South Africa is suffering from information overload. The continuous streaming of mostly inaccurate information regarding COVID has exposed national government as greatly incompetent. Fake news on social media platforms added to our fears, our depression, and the feeling of hopelessness and confusion. We were warned by the media that approximately 10,000 people would die weekly in South Africa because of the Omicron variant. It was a big fat lie. Of the 18,586 cases supposedly attributed to Omicron, 17,700 were in fact due to the Delta variant. It was historic stats that they quoted, dating as far back as April 2020. It caused unnecessary worldwide panic, resulting in England stopping flights to South Africa, and economic disaster to the Western Cape tourism. According to eminent scientist Dr. Fauci, an advisor to President Joe Biden, he announced that the Omicron variant was almost certain not to be more severe than its predecessor, the Delta variant. Netcare confirmed. Netcare CEO says that out of on the 49 hospitals in South Africa, Netcare treated 129,000 patients in terms of the previous third wave. But since 15 November 2021, they only admitted 337 COVID patients, of which 4 died. This is far less than even gang killings in the Cape Town townships, and we are going crazy about forced vaccination. South Africa fought for freedom since 1912. Mandela and others spent years in Robben Island to be free. Don't let us panic by power-hungry, incompetent officials destroy our freedom to choose whether we want to be vaccinated or not. Vaccine passports are autocratic control of the minds of the people. Let's fight HIV. Let's fight diabetes. You know, 90,000 people died this year of diabetics, and 4.5 million are living with diabetes in South Africa, and we don't get daily updates on that. We have 240,000 HIV infections in South Africa in 2018, and 71,000 people died of AIDS in South Africa in 2018. We don't get daily figures, minute by minute, countdowns, how many died. This is a crazy situation. And I say that the Freedom Front is against forced vaccination. I think that the pharmaceutical companies want to recover their costs, billions, for making these masks and vaccines and sanitizers. There's billions involved here.
Thank you.
And I oppose it, forced vaccination. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. I now recognise Honourable Brinkhuis.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Speaker, the Western Cape government has no reason to wait on national government to ensure that healthcare facilities are equipped, properly equipped, and monitoring of hospitals, intakes, and availability of beds, and that schools are also equipped. As the Al Jamaa, we continue to call on citizens to be responsible and to always adhere to the COVID regulations. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Brinkhuis. I now recognise Honourable Lecker. Honourable Lecker.
Deputy Speaker.
I can hear you.
Deputy Speaker, the ANC welcomes this debate today because it believes that it comes at the right time. Only on Monday, when presenting his medium-term budget policy statement, the MEC for Finance played party politics again with COVID-19 and its vaccination rollout. Attacking science and attacking the National Minister of Health, the MEC was in line with the rest of the laptop boys in the DA. Only a week ago or two, the mayor of Cape, who is also said to be a member of the so-called Laptop Boys faction in the DA, came out guns blazing against the National Minister of Health for announcing the new variant. Both these men, the MEC for Finance and the mayor of Cape Town, are supposed to be part of the liberal cabal in the DA, yet they deny South Africans the right to know. Since the election of Helen Zille and Steenhuisen, these laptop boys have made sure that they get rid of the other faction, ensure that their cadres are deployed. Parachute the Honorable David Menir and get rid of Bongibos Matigizela. Parachute Gideon Hill Lewis and get rid of Dan Plato. The DA speaks out against cadre deployment, but it is guilty as it is.
Order, Minister Fritz. No interjections, please. Allow Honourable Lecker to finish. Thank you.
Oh, can I make a point of order?
If you raise your hand, yes. Okay. What's your point of order?
Sorry, I'm struggling with this laptop. Madam Deputy Speaker, shouldn't the chief whip of the ANC stick to the topic? And she's getting into a whole other thing about politics. Can she just stick to the topic, please? It's off topic. Nkosi.
Thank you very much, Minister Fritz. Honourable Syed, what's your point of order?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, on a point of order on Honourable Fritz's point of order. This is a political debate. Speaker has ruled yesterday on these types of points of order. This is a political debate. I don't see how it is off topic. Thank you.
Okay. Honourable Moran and then Honourable Mitchell, and I will then give you my ruling.
Speaker, this is also a point of order on the Honourable Fritz. As I've said earlier on, the Speaker has explained yesterday how point of order should be raised. You cannot just wake out of sleep and just jump up and speak. There's orders in this house.
Thank you, Honourable Moran. And I think Minister Mitchell has put his hand down, if I'm correct. There, Minister Mitchell, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I would just want to remind the Deputy Chief Whip of the African National Congress that as per the rules, you can't call a point of order on a point of order. Okay,
thank you very much, Honourable Mitchell. Honourable members, no more points of order. Honourable members, Honourable Syed. Honourable members, Honourable Fritz it's quite correct, Honourable Fritz, that shouting out is unacceptable. We often call out Honourable Murray on this, and so I will call you out on this. But secondly, I'm going to proceed. Honourable Lecker, this is a political debate. I'm going to proceed with Honourable Lecker finishing her speech. I trust that is fair. We have up to now been very well behaved in terms of getting through these next 3 days. This is a debate, and I'm going to allow Honourable Lecker to proceed. This is not the passing of votes. So Honourable Lecker, you may proceed. Thank you very much.
Before I do, Deputy Speaker, can I check how much time do I still have?
I will allow you to finish, Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Bertie must just take a chill pill.
Don't stir the pot. You may proceed.
The DA speaks out against cadre deployment, but it is as guilty as it gets. But the scientists in this provincial government spoke out again, the DA-led cabal and cadres. Dr. Keith Cloutey, our respected head of health department, came out against the mayor and noted that scientists have been consistently announcing new variants. Yet MEC Menir, even after Dr. Cloutey spoke, still comes out to fight the national minister. Dr. Cloutey has been consistent in his favoring of the ban of selling alcohol during waves and lockdown because, backed by data, he insists that there is a correlation between the sale of alcohol and the admission numbers to our trauma units over weekends. The science again is rejected by the DA, who insist on playing party politics with COVID-19 and vaccination rollout. The Honourable Wendy Philander, who is a praise singer for this provincial government, must tell us what happened to the provincial government's vaccine rollout program when it announced with fanfare that it was going alone and would be procuring vaccines directly from pharmaceuticals. The reality, Deputy Speaker, is that this provincial government has failed to make vaccines accessible to our people. They refuse to work with communities and organizations to promote COVID-19 safety protocols and vaccination, as well as ensure more people have access to these vaccines. The ANC raised concerns at the high level of disregard for COVID-19 safety protocol, especially in our poor working class communities. And this is caused in the main by the provincial government's inability to work with communities to communicate, inform, and enforce adherence to safety protocols, thereby combating COVID-19 fatigue. We were ignored. When the ANC suggested that schools be used during school holidays as vaccination sites, this DA provincial government rejected the idea. We warned that places like Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha had only 3 public vaccination sites each, and these were inaccessible to our people. Our people, the poor as they already are, had to spend money on taking a taxi to vaccination site. On 1st September, 5 million people still needed to be vaccinated in our province. It took this province approximately a year to vaccinate 1 million people. In other words, at the pace we are going, it will take us another 5 years to vaccinate everyone in the province. Again, DA members of the Standing Committee will come here and try to blame national government for the failures of this provincial government. First, they complained that national government was slow in procuring vaccine. Now the vaccines are there, but they cannot implement an effective rollout. With so many people in our province still needing to be vaccinated, one asks, how on earth can you close a vaccination site as big as the one at the City ICC? The reality was that in September already the ANC said that the City ICC vaccination site was not accessible to our people. Then there is a premier who supported the beachgoers. When a whole premier openly defies national government, then we must not be surprised at the high rate of anti-mask and anti-vaxxers in this province. The same beachgoers are probably anti-mask and anti-vaxxers. These are the kinds of people this premier and provincial government promote. In fact, the attempted smothering of science by leading members of the DA in the province and the city, and the promotion of the beachgoers by the premier all point to a provincial government that is dismissive of science. At every nook and corner, this provincial government sought to play party politics with COVID-19, defying national government, fighting national government, and being uncooperative with national government. The attack on Minister Joe Pasa in this house on Monday must be seen as part of this defying and fighting national government. COVID-19 will be around with us for a very long time, and the lockdowns all of us threat will be here to stay. As long as you have a provincial government who fights national government, who wants to keep science a secret, who promotes the sale of alcohol despite the numbers saying trauma units missed to be filled up, who promotes beachgoers and anti-mask, anti-vax.
Finish off, Honourable Lecker. Yes, Honourable Lecker, just give me a second. Honourable Bartman, I have seen your hand, but I've tried on numerous occasions, and when someone is speaking into the mic, they don't hear me. And this is why I said I had conducted a ruling, and that's why I couldn't get Honourable Lecker's attention, because the ruling had already been given. So if you want to now say something around that, but if you are going to contradict the ruling, unfortunately, I have made a ruling. I understand that. Can it wait now? Over to you, Honourable Bartman. It's the first time Honourable Lecker could hear us.
Deputy Speaker, it's a new point of order.
Okay, what's your point of order?
After your ruling, I raised my hand because after your ruling, Member Lecker said, Bertie, you must chill. And in terms of Rule 56, no member may refer to another member by his or her first name or names only. And I know that the Deputy Chief Whip, also for the ruling party, is also very adamant about this rule. So I would like it to please be applied consistently. Thank you.
Thank you for alerting me to that. Honourable Lecker, please can I ask you to withdraw the informal response, the way you responded to the Minister, and then you may proceed.
Deputy Speaker?
Yes.
If I may, I said Honorable Bertie. I didn't just say Bertie. Take a chill pill.
Okay, but I think it's quite informal, and I don't think any of us would be happy with Honourable Beverly and Honourable Massey. So if we could just retain the consistency, I would appreciate that.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Honourable Syed, what's your point of order?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, there's not a point of order, just a point of correction also. My points that I'm raising are when members speak directly to the other members. Here, in this case, the Honourable Lekker didn't say you, Honourable. He said the Honourable Bertie must take it. He did not refer to him directly. I just wanted to put that into context. And then also, I don't think it was informal. She did say Honourable, but if she agrees, that's fine. My main point was put into context my corrections that I do make. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Syed. I think just let's keep the decorum of the House one level up. I appreciate Honourable Lekker withdrawing that. Honourable members, please can we get through this debate of public importance? It is a debate of public importance. Please let's not get too personal on this matter. This is a very serious issue in the interest of with the Western Cape and actually South Africa at large. So over to you, Honourable Lekker. You have to, in fact, Honourable Lekker, your time has expired. Can you finish off with your last sentence, please?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As I conclude, Deputy Speaker, the ANC in the provincial legislature says, if you have not vaccinated, you are not my friend. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lekker. I now recognise Honourable Premier Windy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Can I also, first of all, just say thank you very much to the Honourable Chief Whip for leading in on this very, very important debate. I note it as a debate of public importance. I think it is so. I think also you will note that as a province, we have continually communicated on this pandemic on a weekly basis, and normally we would have even had a Digicon today, but we see this debate as that public space to keep not only the members of this parliament, but the citizens of our province updated on where we are with regards to this pandemic, how we're dealing with it, our readiness, etc. And it is really an important debate. And of course, I want to thank the members for taking part in it. And it is an honor and a privilege to be able to also be part of this debate. First of all, I want to say that there are a couple of areas that I want to just reiterate. I know that Minister Mbombo has outlined our readiness, but I need to just reiterate and confirm. I think it never does any harm to say a few of these things over and over again. But also I want to say that I was of the opinion that I would get some good ideas from this debate. And I must say, sadly, specifically this last input by the Honourable Lekker really never put any ideas on the table, but I will deal with that shortly. First of all, our plans to deal with the fourth wave, and of course where we are, as Minister Mbombo said, in the resurgence stage, not in the fourth wave as yet, as some of our fellow provinces are already. Our number of infections every day are not at that percentage point, but noting what's happening in other parts of the country and with the increase in our numbers, we definitely are on the route or on the way to that fourth wave. I also want to really iterate around our vaccine program and just join the Minister on that. And then lastly, I want to talk about the impact of this pandemic, COVID-19, on the other pandemic, and that is our pandemic of unemployment. It's an absolute unemployment crisis, and we really need to make sure that we've got mechanisms in place to deal with both of these pandemics. They are really serious, and they are both costing lives, livelihoods, and really putting us into a very, very difficult position. So first of all, with the fourth wave, I think as Minister Mbombo has said, that perhaps on Omicron we don't have all the answers as yet, and our scientists are working on it day and night. And I want to urge them to continue as quickly as possible so that we can get to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Of course, obviously this does take time, from infection through to actually coming out on the other side in recovery. It does take, many days. And of course, it's in that time that we can really get to study the implications and the severity of this variant on our society. And of course, that also will give us the information on, first of all, whether our mitigation and our preparedness is correct, but also even put more ammunition on us trying to deal with these shutdowns. But I'll get to that shortly. I can also say that with regards to this, or perhaps regardless of this new variant, our government remains committed that we will ensure that we have sufficient beds, sufficient oxygen, sufficient healthcare workers in place to make sure that every single person in our province gets the care that they need. That has been the position from day one. We will not run out of beds. We must make sure that we don't run out of beds. We must make sure that we can offer that care to every single citizen in our province. And we have done that throughout this pandemic. I'm very proud of our frontline, of our health team. In actual fact, I'm very proud of every single person in this province who's played some part, whether it's in government and across the different government departments, being led by the Department of Health, or whether it's citizens who've actually dug deep, gone across our province and made sure that we've secured through NGOs feeding programs, made sure that we are dealing with this pandemic. Those citizens who are playing their role in making sure that we are masking up, making sure that we are keeping socially distanced so we flatten this curve. We've got our 6-point plan, our action plan that the Minister rolled out, and that is really key. She also spoke about innovation, the backbone of this plan being innovation, and we will continue with the innovation, whether it's the delivery of meds to our citizens or the latest, which she spoke about now, which is that locker system, so you can collect your meds day or night, 24 hours a day, or the award-winning dashboard system. So the data and information is available for our citizens day and night. I think also that same system gives us the triggers in which we can then make sure that we can enact opening of more field hospitals. As the Minister said, Brackengate Hospital open and up and running. When it reaches 50%, it triggers the other field hospitals in Mitchells Plain and Mitchells Plain Hospital of Hope, and those wards, various numbers of those wards, as they open up as need be from the trigger system, as well as Sonstraal, Harry Kumay, in George, all of those extra beds in our hospitals across the system, all operating on that trigger system, and making sure that we're getting that balance right, even in the health system, which is very, very critical. We're balancing lives and livelihoods overall, but within our hospital system, we are also balancing the system itself to deal with the COVID-19 patients, which at the moment is only taking up 6% of our beds. But at the same time, we have citizens in our province who need healthcare. They will need it for various range of health issues, and we've got to make sure that we've got space for them as well. I also want to say that, as I've said, that COVID-19 is not the only killer in our Western Cape, and it's those other life-threatening conditions that has been raised by some of the members in this debate. But those life-threatening conditions that we have to make sure that we've got that underlying health system to deal with them. As a government, we had our supposed last cabinet of the year yesterday, but in that cabinet meeting, again, I enacted the very same hotspot management system with extended cabinet that includes our mayors, our municipal managers, all of our departments, and that has already been put in place to meet every single week throughout this festive season to make sure that we, from a government point of view across this province, all the districts, all the municipalities in the province is managing this pandemic properly as we go into this fourth wave. On the vaccination program, again, also, we know, and the advice of our scientists is, and the scientists worldwide, vaccines are the best tool against severe illness and death. And of course, that is critical. That's why we are pushing for that choice of vaccines. Make sure that we get as many people protected as possible, specifically because we don't have all of the data on Omicron. And we know that if we take our learnings from the first wave, the second wave, and the third wave, we also take learnings from what happens or what is happening in other countries around the world. And we see countries that have high levels of vaccination, and with those countries of high levels, we also still see high infection rates. But what we are seeing as well is that the hospitals are not being filled with vaccinated people. In actual fact, it's unvaccinated people that are taking up the hospital beds. I had a meeting the other day with the German ambassador, the German consul general, and saying, are there any areas that we can learn from you? And we were discussing what this fourth wave is doing to the health system, specifically in our partner province being Bavaria, one of the provinces or one of the regions of Europe with the highest income levels, one of the best health systems in the whole of Europe, and they are full of unvaccinated people, and they are now flying them out to other states and other countries in Europe because they are trying to manage this fourth wave. Of course, we need to make sure we learn from what's happening in other parts of the world. We have also adopted a hyper-targeted approach where we move into communities, as the minister said, with pop-ups, with our pop-up sites, with going into shopping centres, going to the community wherever possible. We've got a new program where our doctors, and I must thank them, our doctors are actually out there in the Ask a Doctor campaign, where they themselves are speaking to people who don't perhaps have all the data on the vaccines. Maybe they're a little bit worried and have a few questions before they take the vaccine, and I want to thank those doctors. They are out there, and they are definitely making a difference when they speak to people. We are not getting a 1-to-1 conversion, we're actually getting a 1-to-2 conversion rate, so thank you very much to them. The mobile units, the vaccine taxis I've spoken about. And I want to just reiterate again that while vaccine is a choice, and in our government we say it is choice, I want to reiterate that it is the best choice. It's the best choice for you to stay out of ICU. It is the best choice if you want to stay alive. I think it's a really good common sense choice. I think it is the correct medical choice. I think it is the best scientific choice. And I definitely think it is the most responsible choice for you yourself, for the economy, for your fellow citizens. Definitely a really good choice to make sure that we get vaccinated. We've also all ready now for the booster shots. And I must also say that the healthcare workers and their booster shots, looking at those numbers, really doing very, very well. So thank you very much. And we are all ready. As soon as the EVDS system is ready, we will be on it immediately. The last issue that I want to really focus on before maybe replying to some of the items raised by the members is this second pandemic, the jobs crisis. And I want to say that I welcome the news that the president agrees that we can't keep locking down in order to manage this virus. We have to learn to live with COVID-19. And I also want to say that I absolutely agree that we can't have the Disaster Act forever. We have already said that we are very, very prepared to be part of those work streams, especially to get ourselves off the Disaster Management Act and put proper regulation in that we can actually live with this virus, and there's tools and management tools to go forward. I also want to say that I unequivocally condemn the travel bans that are imposed on our country and our region. They are absolutely baseless right now. Omicron is now in 49 countries around the world already. And so quite frankly, just punishing Southern African countries is just unacceptable. We believe in proper management systems of air travel. You have PCR tests, you have HEPA filters in your plane, you have masks, you have vaccines. You've got a lot of tools. Travel bans just don't work. The virus will spread without them. We need to listen to the World Health Organization and many of those other supporters who support us in getting rid of these travel bans, and we call on it immediately. We need to remove ourselves from those bans. Then, as I said earlier, I'd like to reply to some of the inputs on some of the debates. I want to say that, and perhaps I'm going to actually begin from the back. I want to begin with the Honourable Lecker. I want to say that, first of all, I think she wasted her time in this debate. She seems to be stuck in a period of time before the 1st of November. She still seems to be stuck in some political arena when she could have been putting good ideas on the table in order for us to work together in beating this pandemic. But no, she had to come with comments like laptop boys, and this is a serious debate. This is a debate of public importance, and quite frankly, I think she definitely missed the boat there. I also want to say that with regards to the data and the trauma report, specifically around alcohol,
Honourable Premier.
Absolutely, I can tell you that in this period of the pandemic.
Honourable Premier.
Yes.
I'm so glad. I was just going to write onto the chat. I see there's a point of order by Honourable Lacke. If you could just hold on. Thank you. Honourable members, it's really difficult to interject as a presiding officer online. So please, when I take that amount of time to see your hand, it's not because I don't see it. It's because it takes a while for people to hear it if they're speaking. Over to you, Honourable Lacke.
I perfectly understand, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I just would like you to make a ruling. I recognize that the Premier initially referred to me as Honourable Lacke, but I think it is against the rules that he will continuously refer to me as she, and most of it directly and not even through you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Sayed, your point of order.
No, Chair, mine is to ask whether the Premier would be willing to take a question on the remarks that have been made by the Mayor and by the MEC.
Okay, so first of all, let me just ask the Premier to refer to Honourable Lacke in her formal capacity, and that the Premier seems to have agreed to answer the question.
Please ask the question.
Yes, ask.
Can I ask the question? Thank you very much. Premier, thank you for that. Premier, was it correct for Honourable Mania and the Mayor of the City of Cape Town to call into question the level of transparency on the part of national government around the discovery of the Omicron virus? Thank you. Was that a responsible thing to do in your view? Thank you.
Over to you, Premier.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Saeed and obviously the Honourable Lacke was not listening to any of the people speaking out about the way in which the press conference was held or what they said about our scientists. Of course, we've got amazing scientists. The thing is about how we deal with it. And quite frankly, the consequences are 250 million rand a day to the tourism sector just in the city of Cape Town alone. So please, we must listen to the context and we must listen to what the minister was saying or the mayor was saying. And that's the answer. I want to come back to the Honourable Lacke and her points that she made. And I want to say that the first one on the trauma report. And that trauma report is a report that deals with every single trauma case that comes into our hospitals. We use it absolutely in the management of COVID-19. We also use it for whether we need to support or not support a lockdown level or an alcohol ban. And there was only one time that we supported that alcohol ban, and that was last year in the middle of the holiday season when our trauma beds were full. And we have rolled that trauma report out now to not just the 5 hospitals, we've rolled it out to 20 hospitals. And we will keep rolling it out because we take the abuse of alcohol very, very seriously. But what we also take very, very seriously are jobs and the economy. And I will not shy away from getting the balance right between the economy and managing jobs on the one side and the pandemic of unemployment, but of course managing lives and this pandemic of COVID-19 on the other side. I also want to deal with the question that the honourable member raises around the procurement of vaccines. She will know very clearly that the ANC failed this country so dismally by getting our vaccines so late. It was unacceptable, and that was why we put the provision of the 74.5 million rand in to procure vaccines. She will also know that just making that announcement woke the ANC up, and then they started getting their act together. We really did try. Unfortunately, we couldn't get procurement for provinces, but I promise you if I got it, I would have used it for this province to get ahead of the curve. I would have also got it for other provinces as well, which is what I did in the first cases when we weren't in place to procure, and anytime I got a lead, I handed it over to the national government.
Thank you, Premier.
NC failed this country dismally.
You can finish your sentence and your time is enough.
It's up.
Yeah, if you can finish your sentence, then your time is, I've been told by the table staff, your time is up. My apologies.
I wanted to say then in closing that she also talks about beaches. It was only her minister, Becky Clearley, that was on the beaches trying to stop people from open fresh air activities. He wasn't anywhere near the gangs or the insurrection in KZN. He was missing where the tough crime is, and he decides to go onto beaches. We still believe that the science backs that up, and quite frankly, I think that that part of her speech is absolutely got to be rejected. We will be ready for this pandemic fourth wave, as we have stated and as the Minister has stated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. Honourable Wenger, I did see your hand up. I just thought to give the Honourable Premier the opportunity to finish. If there was a point of order that was different, I'm happy to listen to you now. Please understand, members, it's really difficult to interject. Yes, Honourable Wenger, my apologies.
No, sorry, I did not have a point of order, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. That, Honourable members, concludes the debate on this subject of importance. Yes, Honourable Lecker, if you got your, is that a point of order?
Yes, I had my hand up and I decided to write on the chat book.
All right.
Sorry.
Yes.
All right, no, it's fine. I didn't hear you ruling on the manner in which the Premier was referring to me as a she. And whilst you did not make a ruling, he then went ahead and continued using that word. So I think I'm a bit offended because you need to make a ruling so that we're all clear.
Okay, I did make a ruling. I just want to hear first Honourable Wenger, then Honourable Bartman, and then I will respond. Honourable Wenger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are two issues here. The first is the rule says that we may not refer to each other by our first names. The Premier did not do that. Then Honourable Syed is always going on about how we may not refer to members as you. So you may not speak directly, but through the chair. The fact that the Honourable Premier called Honourable Lecker she is the third person and therefore not directly speaking to her, which would have then been Honourable Syed's favourite point of order, but in fact through you by using the third person. So I don't think that this is a valid point of order. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Wenger. Honourable Bartman.
No, thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Chief Whip has covered me because the word she in the English language can be considered a pronoun or noun depending on the method in the sentence. Thank you.
All right. Honourable Lecker, I'm going to rule on this matter now. I think in the sense when you admitted that the Premier first addressed you as Honourable Lecker, and then he said she, it is, in my opinion, a continuation. I did ask the Premier. I said, Premier, if we can just keep the formalities formal. So I did actually ask the Premier, and that will be in the Hansard. But I think that there was no animosity there in terms of he never started his conversation around you stating she. So, you know, I think the Chief Whip has a fair point here. If he hadn't, then that would have been a little bit more impersonal and certainly would have required a calling out. But I don't believe the Premier had done that. And I think that you can refer to Hansard, but I think I'm going to stick now that I did mention to the Premier, it's in the Hansard. We did ask him to just keep formalities in addressing people in the same way and consistent. And the Premier, as you note, didn't do anything that was offending anyone afterwards. So I trust that that is a fair response to your point raised. Thank you very much.
Will you read my response on the chat?
I will do that. I will do that. All right. Honourable Lecker, if you can lower your hand so that we can actually proceed with the business of the day. Thank you very much. Honourable members, that concludes the debate on this subject. The rulings have been done. I'm going to hand over to the Speaker to proceed, and in the meantime, while he's getting ready, no, he's ready to ask the Secretary to announce. Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you, honourable members.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Honourable members, the Secretary will read the 9th order of the day.
Consideration of report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill B19-2021 NCOP, ratification of final mandate.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The House received the report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP not to support this bill. So this mandate has been sent to the NCOP. I will now afford the parties an opportunity to make a declaration if they so wish. It will not be more than 3 minutes per political party. Honourable members, I recognize the ANC.
Ngosi Somlomo, when presenting his medium-term budget policy statement, the Minister of Finance, the Honourable Enoch Godongwana, said, and I quote, to ensure equitable allocation of resources to provinces in response to the need to strengthen service delivery. The health component of the provincial equitable share has been reviewed and will be implemented from the 2022-23 financial year. Meanwhile, provinces receive almost 2 trillion in transfers over the 2022 MTAF. These allocations are made to maintain our commitment to the delivery of education, health, and other social services to our people, close quote. The ANC, therefore, supports the National Division of Revenue Amendment Bill. We are pleased that national government has led the way in ensuring that serious attempts are made to ensure that our children and young people have access to quality education. Sufficient support is provided for the fight against COVID-19 and other health challenges and other social services which mitigate, amongst others, poverty in our provinces and the country. In addition, we must also welcome the additional allocations provided by the DORA, including, amongst others, the 14.7 billion to assist provinces in the implementation of the Public Sector Coordinating Bargaining Council wage agreement for the 2021-22 financial year, of which almost 1.5 billion was allocated to this province and confirmed by the budget speech and the MTPPS, which was presented to us on Monday. The 11 billion towards the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, towards education, health and social development, towards employment of education and general assistance, staff and assistant nurses, graduate unemployment towards social workers, and provision for unemployment risk for ECD-related workers. We call on innovation from the departments and our provincial treasury to work in an effective intergovernmental way to ensure the funds to ease youth unemployment can run a longer mile and be attached to some existing government initiatives where possible exit opportunities to elongate the employment experience and thus employability of our youth. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kondlo. Honourable members, I recognize the EFF.
Ngosi Somlomo, the EFF will abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Makamba Boja. Honourable members, I now recognize the Good Party. All right, let's proceed. I now recognize the ACDP.
Speaker, the ACDP abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Christians. Honourable members, I now recognize the Freedom Front Plus.
Honourable Speaker, I gladly support the budget.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. Honourable members, I now recognize Al Jama.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, we don't support the budget.
Thank you, Honourable Brancase. Honourable members, I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, 2.1019 billion rand increase has been allocated to the Western Cape, increasing the budget for the 2021-2022 financial year to 56.4 billion rand due to the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, as well as the public wage. In particular, 1.4 billion rand of this 2 billion rand increase is made available for the public wage for the current financial year. And while we welcome this funding due to the uncertainty surrounding public wage bill, the amount does not make provision for the previous year or the outer 2 years. Further, of the remaining amount of the 2 billion rand, 566 million rand will be allocated for education, school assistance, and 36 million to health staff nurses as part of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative. The Western Cape Budget Committee unanimously resolved on points 7 and 8, highlighting our concerns in the report regarding the sustainability of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative grant, as it created short-term intervention compared to long-term sustainability effects of unemployment. We went further to highlight that National Treasury should consider disaggregating the data within the budgetary process. And this recommendation was made in line with international best practices on the matter. Further, while we appreciate the increase in HIV, TB, malaria, and community outreach grant of 23 million rand, the funds are essentially a functional shift, meaning that provinces have demonstrated their readiness to take over the full funding and management of these services. However, there's no guarantee that it will actually increase the headcount or particular service delivery. Further, both Western Cape and Gauteng provinces will be severely affected by the change in the health component of the provincial equitable share formula over the MTEF period. In particularly the Western Cape, our health budget over the MTEF period will be cut by the national government by 1.2 billion rand. In layman's terms, if you're not familiar with the workings of the financial information and you look at the DORA across provinces and see an increase in numbers, what you won't see is that the budget is increasing nominally by 1.5%, while National Treasury estimated inflation at 4.5%, meaning our provincial budget will decrease by 8.4 billion rand in real terms over the medium term. You will see an increase in conditional grants, but what you won't see in the numbers is the province's independence being undermined, and that many, if not all, the increases are functional shifts, meaning that the National Treasury is simply moving money around different bank accounts. Further, the PES formula still makes no provision for the inclusion of community safety and particularly gender-based violence as a component of the provincial equitable share formula to capacitate efforts to combat violence and criminal activity in the province. And further, the MTEF period sees plans to shift the colleges of agriculture to the national government, and this would negatively impact on the workings on Elsenburg College as well as the Provincial Department of Agriculture. And there's no reason that NSFAS cannot simply include accredited colleges and institutions within their framework. Speaker, we recommend as the Budget Committee to adopt the report, to not support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. Honorable members, I have to announce that the House to date, we have in total a number of 33 members present, with the Democratic Alliance sitting at 20 of the present members, the ANC at 9 honorable members present, EFF 1, good, absent, ACDP 1, FF plus 1, Al-Jama 1. I have to put the question to the House that the report of the Budget Committee on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP, not to support this bill, be ratified and adopted. Are there any objections?
No.
Yes, we object as the ANC.
No. All right, the objection has been noted. The report will be forwarded to the NCOP, and the question has thereby been approved and the objection has been noted. So the report of the Budget Committee, as I indicated, on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill has then been adopted as per the request and the recommendation of the committee, with the objections as noted. Thank you, honorable members. The Secretary will now read the 10th order.
Oorweging van die verslag van die staande komitee oor landbou, omgewingsake en ontwikkelingsbeplanning oor die wysigingswetsontwerp op nasionale omgewingsbestuurswette, die Nasionale Raad van Verteenwoordiging van Provinsies, bekragtiging van finale mandaat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. The House received the report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning on the National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP to not support this bill. This mandate has been sent to the NCOP. I will now afford the parties represented in the WCPP an opportunity to make a declaration if they so wish. I now recognize the ANC.
Thanks, Speaker. Speaker, yesterday, the ANC rose and saw its maturity by supporting the Provincial Biodiversity Bill. And today it is chance to support the same kind of legislation, but at the national level. The National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill, amongst others, will govern specific aspects of the environment, such as air, biodiversity, the coastline, protected areas such as nature reserves, and waste management. This national legislation will be in the purview of 11 competent authorities, including our provincial government. However, our province remains unique because we have a provincial constitution, which makes provision for an environmental commissioner. A number of concerns surrounding this piece of legislation was raised at the national level, and it is worth mentioning them here today in support of the bill. How this legislation will impact on land owned by traditional leaders, the public participation processes, job creation, advancement of SMMEs, and waste management as a source of job creation. In the era of the green economy and climate change, we commend the ANC-led government for adopting policy in order to meet the material challenges of our time. The ANC rise to support this legislation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maran. Honorable members, I now recognize the EFF. EFF. Let us now move to the ACDP. I recognize the ACDP.
Speaker, the ACDP has got no declaration. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. The FF Plus.
The FF Plus abstain from declaring anything on this bill. So.
Thank you, Honorable Mare. The Al-Jama.
Thank you, Speaker. With the Al-Jama, we support the bill. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes, the DA.
Honorable Speaker, it's my privilege to speak on the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning's report on its mandate to our representatives in the National Council of Provinces not to support the National Environmental Laws Amendment Bill B14F of 2017. Yes, Honourable Speaker, you heard correctly. That was the 6th version of this bill that was to be considered. This bill seeks to amend various acts dealing with the environment. This includes the National Environmental Management Act of 1998, the National Environmental Management Amendment Act of 2008, the Air Quality Act of 2004, the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act also of 2004, the Integrated Coastal Management Act of 2008, the Protected Areas Act of 2003, and the Waste Act of 2008. It should therefore come as no surprise that the F version of the bill consists of 89 clauses spanning 47 pages. The Standing Committee advertised the bill for public comment, and I'm grateful for the significant number of comments received from entities and members of the public. As members will expect, with so many changes to such a wide range of acts, we as the Standing Committee submitted a long list of proposed amendments to the Select Committee of the NCOP. I was really sorry to learn that none of the Western Cape's proposed amendments were favorably considered, if considered at all. Fortunately, some of our proposed improvements were indeed echoed by other provinces, albeit in slightly different wording, leading to many much-needed improvements in the wording and content of the bill. Unfortunately, two major concerns remained. Clause 35 proposed the insertion of subsection 1C to section 43 of NEMA, meaning that any person may appeal against the decision made by the licensing authority contemplated in clauses 36.1, or 47A of the National Environmental Management Air Quality Act. In the case of municipalities, the appeal will be to the Municipal Council. This requires consequential amendments to sections 43.4, 5 and 6, which were unfortunately not included. Secondly, the Constitution of South Africa allocated the responsibility for air quality management to local governments. Section 36(5)(c) of the National Environmental Management Air Quality Act allocates this responsibility to the National Minister as the licensing authority for listed activities. We are concerned that this will in the future be tested and found wanting by the Constitutional Court. These concerns led the Standing Committee in its view that the House confers on the Western Cape's delegation in the NCOP the authority to not support the National Environmental Management Act's Amendment Bill BF14 of 2017. Honourable Speaker, there's unfortunately a worrying aspect that I need to bring under the attention of the House. The last version, the F version of this complex amendment bill, containing numerous amendments, was only forwarded to provinces last Wednesday, the 1st of December 2021, with no prior notice of when the bill would be forwarded. It came out of the blue. The National Council of Provinces scheduled their meeting to consider the mandates from provinces for this Tuesday, the 7th of December 2021. A mere 6 days later, the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning was of the view that this tight timeline placed the committee under undue pressure to consider the legislation. As members will see, we highlighted this aspect in our report.
Thank you, Honourable.
Thank you.
The West States. Honourable members, I would like to, at this stage, put the question to the House, and the question that we have been asked to consider as the House is whether is for the House to support the report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and the Development Planning on the National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill, conferring authority on the Western Cape delegation in the NCOP, not to support this bill, be ratified and adopted. Honourable members, in the House, we have 32 present members. If you compare between this report and the previous one, we're 33. Now we are down to 32. The DA has got 21 present members, ANC 7, Economic Freedom Fighters 1, Good none, ACDP 1, FF Plus 1, Al-Jamar 1, and that is the quorum which enables us to pass this report. Honourable members, are there any objections to the report being adopted?
No. None.
No.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was struggling, man, to be in a meeting. I'm sorry, man. I only joined now.
That's fine, Honourable Member. There is an objection. Which party is that?
This objection comes from the ANC Speaker. We don't support the report.
Yes.
The ANC's objection will be noted. Is there any other objection?
Somlong is not an objection, it's an abstain. To abstain.
We've noted the abstinence of the EFF, ACDP, FF Plus. Those have been noted.
Sorry, Speaker, the Al-Jama also, we object against this bill.
The Al-Jama objects, so the ANC's objection and Al-Jama has been noted. May I then, with those having been confirmed, confirm to the House that this report has been adopted as per the recommendation of the committee. Therefore, the question has been approved. The report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning on the National Environmental Management Laws and Amendment Bill has therefore been adopted as per the request of the Standing Committee. Thank you very much, honourable members. The Secretary will now read the 11th order of the day.
Consideration of report of the Rules Committee on the Presiding Officer's Manual.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Honorable members, I have been informed by the Chief Whip that the Programming Authority resolved that there will be no list of speakers and that parties wish to do so will now be afforded an opportunity to make a declaration of the vote for a maximum of 3 minutes. So I now afford the opportunity for the parties to do so. I recognize the ANC. Okay, ANC.
Speaker.
Chief Whip. I recognize you, Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for clarity, I'm not clear. Are we still on order number 10 or have we moved on to order number 11?
We have concluded on order number 10. We are now on order number 11, Madam Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for clarity, there will be no declarations, but simply the question put for order number 11. That was the agreement in the Programming Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chief Whip and the Chair of the Program Authority. There may have been an error in the communication because there was a different measure before the presiding officer. Let me then proceed. Is there an agreement to adopt and approve the presiding officer, or are there any objections by parties?
No objection from the Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you. Any objections?
No objections.
Thank you. No objections. Agreed to. So the amendments. Thank you, honorable members. The House has unanimously approved the amendments to the presiding officer's manual, thereby accordingly approving it. Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable members, this is now the end of the day. And I just wish to thank you all for a very fruitful, albeit a long day, but it was one which enabled the House to conclude its business. And I'm very much humbled by your cooperation and, of course, the support from the table staff, the interpreters, sign language, and other 3 languages, Sikos, Afrikaans, and English. Thank you very much. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned. Have a great evening.
Thank you.